Daryl Sims, coming up in a moment, is a certified hypnotherapist, certified hypnotic anesthesiast, certified master neurolinguistic practitioner, international speaker, licensed private investigator in the state of Texas, and researcher of alleged human alien encounters. His discoveries of the alleged alien implantation and fluorescence found on abductees following reported contact by alien entities are but two finds that his medical scientific team explores. In 1994, a writer reviewing his work originated the name Alien Hunter. That's a good name, Alien Hunter. Mr. Sims' primary work is gathering physical evidence from cases of alleged human-alien contact. He is an advisor investigator for the Parsec organization. This is an Italy-based organization of medical doctors, physicists, psychotherapists, and other professionals who invited Sims to come on board in 2000 and use his skills to complete professional investigations in psychological and physical evidence in the work. His presentations to medical scientific college conferences and so forth, and the public at large, show compelling approaches to human-alien encounters. His extensive training and experience in investigative approaches and therapeutic interventions allows him to select the right approach for the individual and the event. So an obvious first question will be, after all of this investigation, are we being occupied? Are we being invaded? Are we being, well, are they here? So I guess the first logical question for Daryl Sims is, well, really I should say, welcome to the show, Daryl.
Thank you, Art. Good to be here.
Great to have you. The first logical question for me to ask you is, are they real, and are they really here?
Well, I think if you mean by who they, or the alleged alien, as people refer to them as, I often refer to them as the entities, because I'm not really sure what an alien is.
That's fair.
I believe that, based on my personal experience as an abductee since 1952, I continued to be an abductee for 13 years. The event stopped violently when I was 17, and my events just stopped completely.
How do you have a violent stoppage?
Well, that is still a bit of a mystery to me. My events...
well, violent is a serious word, so it implies a big something or another, right?
It really was, Art. I never understood any of the events from childhood, just other than the entities being present. And the last event, my door was actually broken into. The lock was broken off when someone actually kicked it in.
That's violent.
My parents never woke up. They were in the next room. My sister never woke up. She was in another room. No one in the house was aware of anything. The five entities that showed up in my last event, I had never seen before. I've never seen them, and after 38 years of investigations, I've never seen any of them in any drawings or any other text. I have met 8 people who have seen.
When did these entities you just talked about begin to visit you? This was not the first time, right?
That's correct. The event actually started when I was 3.5 years old in Midland, Texas. There was an entity standing in my room. I became very aware of it.
When you say entity, now try and do better for me. Now, perhaps not at 3, but I mean gathered through all time. What do these things look like? This
one was pure white, long, tall, and skinny, about 5 foot tall. It had a large bulbous head, very similar to the shapes of some of the things that people report currently. The difference was that the entity did not have, or the alien, if we want to use that term, certainly alien to me.
I'm not sure we do want to use that term. Perhaps something else you tell us will give us an indication. But right now, I'm with you. Entity, we don't know what these are, do we?
I certainly don't. After 38 years, I'm still debating that. But the entity had large black eyes. They were perfectly round, not the elliptical ones that you see so much on the movies or even people report now.
Yes.
I was puzzled in every sense of the word because for two reasons. One is, what in the world was the thing? I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never had a bad dream that I could remember. And you got to remember, this is 1952.
Oh.
There weren't any alien movies, that you sit around and watch. And my parents would have never allowed me to watch something like that anyway. So
can I ask you a rude question?
Sure.
How do you know you weren't having delusions?
That's a very fair question, and I had to, as an investigator, had to pose that to myself for years. The entity was still standing there. I was able to move. It was wintertime, and it was quite cold. I had plenty of covers on, and I lifted up enough to look at it to wonder what. I wasn't afraid or anything. I just couldn't understand what it was. And one of the things that was curious to me is I couldn't see its knees and I couldn't see its feet. The reason is because I was lying down. Now, if I'm hallucinating, I should be able to see anything and everything.
That's a good point, I suppose. Yeah, you're going to have a full hallucination, not just
for sure. I mean, why would it be selective?
Well, okay, maybe. But the brain might eliminate the legs and feet because the brain would know you can't see through the bed, or should know in normal everyday life you wouldn't see through the bed, so why not concoct an illusion that's realistic?
That makes sense if you've got a lot of experience. At 3.5 years old, I don't know how much experience one would have to create hallucinations.
Well, that's a good point.
So, to me, what was curious was the entity began at that point to start to move toward me. And then instantaneously, as it began to move toward me, I became instantly paralyzed. Now, I thought that was very strange, and it was frightening. And what was curious about the whole thing...
Not unusual, though, in reports.
For sure. But the thing that bothered me was that I wasn't paralyzed, and I wasn't even afraid. And now I was. And, of course, after years of looking at my own case... and over 1,000 other cases worldwide, it became apparent to me that the fear was installed, and so was the paralysis. And it seemed to be coming from, and I have no basis for this other than looking at other people's cases as well. It seemed to be coming from something that the entity was able to manipulate or do with his large black eyes. Yet that made no sense to me because they didn't really do anything that I noticed that I could really put my finger on, so to speak.
Well, if you were paralyzed, were you also perhaps unaware of the passage of time or even what was going on around you at some point?
It took me years to figure this out, looking at it, because I really didn't want to for a long time. But what had happened is the event was actually over and the entity was leaving. And I switched on for whatever reason. Now, the reason I think that's true is because when I was in a surgery in 1981... What
do you mean switched on?
Well, it's not like you woke up. It's not like that at all. It's like it's literally like you were just turned on. Somebody had turned you off, and then all of a sudden you're on.
Got it.
And the switch was just strange. It's not like waking up whatsoever.
In other words... Nothing
like that.
In other words, back to reality.
Yes, sir.
Like that.
So the curious thing about that to me, in the operation where I was getting a chemical pain injection for a back surgery from a car accident, I woke up, literally switched on, and woke up wasn't even the right word because it stunned the two surgeons that were there and the team and the anesthesiologist.
What did?
The fact that not only did I woke up, but I sat up and I stood up and started talking naturally to Dr. Albina, my surgeon, and wanted to know why he had hired someone else to do the work because he wasn't qualified, which was absolutely true. He wasn't tested to do that particular kind of a new injection. The point is that I was completely coherent, as if I had been switched on. It scared the anesthesiologist half to death. I mean, he's paid to keep me knocked out, and here I am coherent,
waking up.
I'm sitting up, and then I stand up and start walking around with all these wires hanging out of me, so to speak. And it was very similar to the same event. I recalled that it was much like the same event when I was 3.5, like being switched on. So that ability I later found useful with the encounters, then I realized that there are other things that you can do. You don't have to be a victim laying there or anything. You can actually participate. You can actually hear what the entities are actually saying.
Daryl, what do you think was done to you when you were switched off?
I don't have a strong sense of what happened in the first event, because that's when I was brought back.
Or any event.
Oh, now that's a better question to me.
Okay.
The first thing is, which this is real unusual. My parents, I never told them anything. In fact, my 74-year-old mother saw me on the History Channel the other night, and she says, "I knew you do the investigations, but Daryl, they said you were an abductee."
What were you doing on the History? Oh, you were interviewed as an abductee or an investigator?
As an investigator who is also an abductee on this particular show.
Gotcha.
And here she is, 74 years old. She became my biggest critic. She said that just could not have happened. I said, "Mom, the next night I was sleeping between you and Dad. I was so upset, and I never would tell you what it was, that you two must have thought I had a bad dream, because I don't ever remember sleeping in the bed with those two ever as a child."
Huh.
And they had me between them. And I said, and I described exactly how she slept and exactly how he slept as a matter of course, and she was just startled. And I said, the reason I know is because I was switched on again, or switched on myself, and I looked up and there's two entities standing there the next night. And that one of them was the same one that was there the night before, and the other one looked just like him, but I don't know how I knew it.
All right, now,
but he was different.
This question goes back to what happened to you while you were switched off?
Well, there again, in the second event, I didn't know much, other than I tried to wake my dad up. He hit him with my elbow until my little elbow hurt, hitting his spine, and couldn't wake my dad up, which was, again, consistent through my events.
You hit my spine, I'd wake up.
But you bet. At age 12, I do remember a lot more about the event, and I'll give you an illustration there. I, again, switched on, 12 years old, 1305 Ohio Street, Alamogordo, New Mexico, outside Holloman Air Force Base and White Sands Missile Range. I lived there for 13 years. I go outside thinking I'd heard my mother's voice, which my mom was sound asleep. We know that for sure. I went outside and saw something that was quite bright, and this is in my backyard, and it looked like a star, but I couldn't figure out. I've never seen a star that bright so close to the level of the ground, and it came at me very quickly, and just about like the movie. I hate to use a movie as an illustration, but the light was so bright the way it came.
It's all right. I do it all the time.
It's
Close
the movie Phenomenon.
Oh, Phenomenon.
When the light hit like that, and then the guy just passed out.
Okay.
The next thing I notice, I wake up in a circular room. I'm tilted. I'm on a very hard table, and I'm tilted. My feet are upward about 11 degrees, and I'm lying on this table. The same entity that always picks me up is there, and he's talking to someone else just outside the light range. I mean, there's a bright light over me, and it doesn't light the whole room. It only lights just that immediate area where I'm at. And I can overhear him talking to the other entity.
Yes.
And I can't figure out why the guy won't come out of the dark.
They're speaking American English?
In all these cases, they're speaking the language of the individual, whether it's Portuguese, whether it's Japanese.
You mean of the abductee?
Of the abductee.
Okay.
They will hear in their language.
And to you, they were speaking a what? Texan?
They were speaking.
Well, now, what are we going to do to them this time?
It was very, very clear. How the best way to describe it? It was more of an adult language, as far as I was concerned, because I began to listen to them describe a procedure. And I never knew anything about this procedure until about 20 years later.
What kind of procedure?
They were describing, this is really difficult to discuss this on air before.
No, go ahead.
They were discussing what they wanted to do. And they were talking about, they were discussing something that had to do with activating and shutting down different parts of the brain.
Okay.
And I couldn't understand, first of all, why I was even there and what in the world they were doing. And the next thing I noticed is there's this long needle-like device that is the entity that always picks me up is coming toward me with, and it's got a silver little ball on the end of it. This is 1960. I'm 12 years old.
Yes.
And I am just shaking.
A needle with a ball on the end.
A needle-like device, about 9 inches long,
Oh.
a little tiny ball on the end of it.
Great.
He inserts it in my nasal passage and
Oh, great.
jams it in, and it breaks the bones. It hurts so bad. I mean, I was screaming.
It broke your nasal bones?
Broke the nasal passage, the little bones inside there, and it felt like it went up behind the eye. And the next thing I notice after all this is over is I'm back in bed.
Behind the eye, through the nose,
morning,
enough so
blood
you
on my pillow.
can. So you can. Oh, I'm sure at least. So you could feel it jam up through your nose, literally to an area you could feel behind your eye. That's
That is correct.
unbelievable.
Well, that started me many years later on a trek to try to find out if other people had a similar type procedure.
Do you have any idea the motivation or intent of the procedure, other than utter terror in you? What else was it supposed to do? Did they ever?
I don't know ultimately what that was all about, but I do have a little better sense, perhaps now, because a gentleman just emailed me not a few months ago, and he showed me one of the most remarkable implantations I've ever seen out of the dozens of cases I have.
I mean, they jammed that mama right up to your frontal lobe.
He's got an object located in the exact same location as I described. He describes the exact same procedure, and he never mentioned abduction to his doctors. They found this themselves, and they're puzzled and amazed.
And you didn't write this in a book that he might have read?
I am finalizing a book after 38 years. I'm finishing the last
yes.
chapter, but he's never read anything like that.
Got it. Okay.
Never read it.
All right. Wow.
So he's sitting there telling me the story, and his doctors are stunned because this is obviously a manufactured object. It's larger than a BB. It's in approximately mid-brain behind his eye.
Okay, and they found this with
he claims
what?
It went up directly through his nasal passage.
Yes. They found this with what? An MRI?
With the MRI. Whew. And they're sitting there stunned because it can't be there because it's not from any kind of an explosion or anything like that. There's no damage, no trauma to the area. It makes no sense. So he kept his abductions quiet and still has. And he's just grinning from ear to ear. He says, and I went to your website at alienhunter.org, and he said, and I was stunned to see some of the similar things.
Yeah,
and
obviously.
I said, well, what I don't have
Yeah.
on there, and I didn't tell anybody in great detail, is the details of what happened to me. And I only did that after he had revealed to me what had happened to him.
Right.
And it of course, it's just staggering to see an object very similar to what the object, in my view, was a little bit smaller, what was installed in my nasal passage. And here's one inside him with the same procedure, the same exact way.
I'm sure you two had quite a talk.
We certainly did.
Hold it right there. There's one thing that I want to do first, though, and that is, I mentioned at the head of the program tonight that scientists had recorded the sound of the Earth breaking apart, and I've got it. Thank you. As Darrell was telling us about what happened to him, I emailed it to myself, ripped it off on a CD, and I've got it right here. Now, these are microphones used to detect nuclear devices, breaking treaties, that kind of thing. Normally, it's dead quiet. And indeed, in this recording, that's the way it starts off, dead quiet. And then I hope your speakers, you're going to have to turn up your radio. I hope your speakers are going to be able to reproduce this properly because it's at a very low frequency, not generally conducive to playing on broadcast radio, but who cares? I'm going to play it anyway. And first, you have relative silence. You can hear a gathering. I'm just going to let this go. If you've got good speakers, you're going to be able to hear this. If not, I don't know. But here comes the 9.3 tsunami, earthquake that produced the tsunami. Obviously, this goes on for almost 8 minutes. That's the earth ripping, the sound of the earth tearing, a big part of the earth itself tearing. Just thought I'd pass that along. I mean, can you imagine the scientists who started hearing this? Obviously, these sounds that you're now hearing are alarms going off. Those are audible alarms of some sort going off. And some guy must have sat there with the headphones saying, "Hey, boss, someone just lit off 500 megatons somewhere on Earth." And then saying, "No, wait, it's bigger. Oh, wait, this is really something horrible." Can you imagine? Once again, Daryl Sims. Daryl, welcome back.
Thank you, Art.
That was an awesome sound.
I was curious that because when I was waiting, I heard that entire.
That's because
I wondered what in the world, and you weren't on, and yeah. I was hearing every bit of that, and I went, "What in the world?"
Yeah, that was me making sure it would work after I burned the CD. Working. Incredible. All right, and so is what happened to you, Daryl. I have a doctor that I interview that I know that you know who removes implants. I have others who claim they have implants, and now you met this other fellow who had an implant inserted, obviously, the very same way you did, or close to it. Do you have any idea, since you've had it, since your friend that you've now met has had it, has it done anything you're aware of? The implant.
In my view, and I've headed up 23 surgical operations. We have a cardiovascular surgeon that does our work currently, and in all these operations, the questions we ask, whether we do them directly or whether they've been done by someone at the VA hospital or other places where we've asked for them to be done, usually without giving any information alien-wise or anything about it, just other than it's curious and it needs to be removed. Many of the abductees, with the exception of only a couple, felt like they were free once the object is removed. Now, whether that's psychological, psychogenic, or psychosomatic,
probably some of all.
Maybe all, any or part or whatever. They seem to feel very good about that. Only 2 reported that they felt like it should have remained, and so on. So one of the things we're doing now is to look at the objects in situ, inside the body, and see if we can find any evidence of anything occurring there.
Okay.
We do have a case in Italy that's been studied by a physicist and who's accredited our work at Sabre with the pioneering work in implants and so on.
Good.
Whatever that is.
And
I honestly don't know.
That's fine. An expert. What does he conclude? What's he seen, or what does he conclude?
What he found in an object in a man's hand in Italy was that the individual he started checking meridians in the individual and seeing if there was any possible connection to that. And he felt like that the individual was actually getting better from some enormous anger problems that they had. And it was his view that because the individual was getting better, that perhaps the implant was doing something good for him in that respect. And I asked the question, I said, "Doctor," I said, "now, I'm not trying to be negative here. I said, I'm going to put my police hat on here. I used to be a cop, and I worked in the intelligence community for 2 years in the Central Intelligence Agency." So
you did.
That is correct. I said, "So I want to ask you a question here with my little cop hat on. It's pretty blunt." And he said, "All right, go ahead." And I said, "What makes you think they're not the cause of the anger to begin with?"
Well, they weren't there at that point.
And he says,
wouldn't that be a good answer? In other words, the implant had come and was now curing the anger, not the cause of it.
Well, they agreed. In other words, if you created the problem and now you're eliminating it, in the eyes of the abductee, you're his savior.
Or did the anger begin with the implant?
Thank you.
I just want to be clear here.
Anger, in my opinion, would start before it did with me, and it has with many other abductees. Sometimes the abductees will focus their anger specifically on a parent. And the reason is simply because when you pin them down to this, when you finally isolate everything, especially in a therapeutic setting, you'll find in many cases that the anger focused on the parent by the abductee boils down to one particular issue. You didn't protect me.
Yeah. I guess I can see that. But again, going back to this doctor, they did an MRI and they found this object. Was there any way to describe it? You said a BB?
It was a little ball-like object in the individual's hand. And another thing he found was that there were certain times that many of the abductees, we collated a lot of our information as well, and this is some of the things we came up with, that the specific times, 3 o'clock in the morning and other times specifically, that abductees report most of their events occurring, not all of them certainly, because some of them are daylight events, as some of mine were when I was hunting. But some of these times, these people are extremely susceptible based on their sleep patterns. And of course, now your debunkers are going to come after that and say, well, it's because it's sleep paralysis. Well, anybody that has half a brain knows about sleep paralysis and can figure that out. In fact, one of the parts in our book, a surgical nurse is writing it with me, and Pat goes into great detail, since she's also a surgical patient, of sleep paralysis and other altered states from various kinds of anesthesia, drugs, and so on, and what they do and what they produce. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be quite an interesting read from that point of view, because she goes into every state.
Look, the fact that there's an implant in somebody, that's about enough for me. I've had them described in various ways by a surgeon who's actually cut into them, and they're covered by some sort of web-like material that is really strange and resists even the very sharpest scalpels. And then sort of after a while, after it's out, if they can get it, disintegrates. And so, I've heard a lot about this. I mean, there is something to it. Something is being put in people.
Well, the objects that we retrieved, we actually took and placed in a scientific setting through the National Institutes of Discovery Science, and had 18 of their scientists review the work that had been done.
You mean Bob Bigelow's organization?
Bob Bigelow's outfit.
Okay, so they...
Doc Valet and a number of other scientists were present during that meeting. They grilled us very, very well, and we were funded for a study to find out what in the world these particular objects were. There were 4 objects in this one particular setting, removed from 2 people.
Yes.
That's just one of many cases. But the findings were rather remarkable from my point of view, simply because they turned out to be meteoric in origin. And lamellar needle-like projections simply do not exist inside people with 11 different elements wrapped around them.
Hold on. Now, when you say meteoric in origin, that means that they found exactly what that doesn't belong on Earth.
They found first, it's important for your audience to understand this, that the objects were sent to scientists, dispassionate, who had no knowledge of any alien or any surgery, anything. All they got was metal that they were to analyze. They were paid $22,000 to analyze metal. That's it. Got it. They analyze it, and they come up with a report that says this is from the rare Widmanstatten or the Yaochung meteorite. Period.
Only because they find ratios that are not consistent with anything on Earth, ratios of different metals and so forth that aren't here on Earth. That's how they know something comes from elsewhere.
Very correct.
So your scientists then concluded that whatever this was, whatever in the hell it was, didn't come from here.
Well, they were also stunned by the fact that it had the 11 different elements surrounding it that shouldn't be there.
Right.
That made no sense whatsoever.
Any indication from those who studied it of any machine-like or functional nature?
No, as a matter of fact, let me back up just a little bit to set the stage a little better for the audience. In 1994, I was invited to speak to 250 surgeons at John Muir Medical Hospital. The subject was medical complications of alleged human-alien contact.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is a continuing education program for surgeons. And here I come in with this presentation, and they're literally stunned at what the presentation is, and they're stunned that there's medical evidence, and they're amazed that I told them I'm not here to convince you of this, the entities that do this stuff. I'm simply asking you to, really, I want you to prove me wrong. That's what I'm here for. And here's how you prove me wrong. And I told them when these people start coming in, and I brought 2 abductees who had medical anomalies on them, and they gave their testimony. And I told the surgeons, I said, listen, if you'll start checking these lumps, bumps, scars, and different things these people come in with, what you're going to find is some of these people are going to have nerve cells that are not native to that part of the body in this place. And what you're looking for most of the time is see if it's benign or it might be cancerous. That's pretty much all you're looking for. Please start analyzing these things closer, and if they're really alien in origin, I said, here's what you're going to find. I said, so prove me wrong. Here are the points. First of all, you'll find that there'll be no technology, no discernible technology whatsoever. None. That's the first thing that's going to stun everybody about these implants when they're first removed. Second, we're going to find that nerve cells are not going to be are going to be present that are not native to that part of the body.
Right.
And third, I said, in some cases, I said, well, I think a lot of what we're looking at right now, the metal and the other implants that we're looking at here in these CAT scans, MRIs, and X-rays, in fact, are passé. They're actually old and outdated. I think what we're going to eventually start finding are biological implants in people. It's going to be an accident when we find it, and they're going to be have nerve cells that are really bizarre because they're going to be central nervous system cells. In essence, you would have a little mini brain right there in any part of the body.
And their findings after they went to look for what you suggested?
In the first set of surgeries that were public, and I'd already done some that were private, but we did some that were public as well.
Yes.
And what we found was those statements. In fact, the 2 surgeons that were involved in this called me at 11 o'clock that night and said, you're not going to believe what we found. I said, I'll bet I do. They said, no signs of inflammatory response like you predicted to those surgeons, wrong nerve cells present, no discernible technology. We don't even know what the thing is. And they're, of course, just stunned. And they said, well, how in the world could you possibly know? And I said, well, you're not going to like the answer. And they said, what's that? I said, I was there. 12 years old, 1960, in Alamogordo, New Mexico. I got the same procedure. I said, I know what happens to these people. I was there. I don't have to research it. I was present. I am an eyewitness.
All right, so you got all this confirmed, and that's a lot to have confirmed. Meteoric in origin, not of this earth, in other words, and removed from a human body, and you called it. So now what?
Well, we also I also decided that there were other things we need to be looking for, too, and this was in 1992. And we had a lady who was in Houston, Texas, who was a millionaire, and, of course, she said, you don't understand, we're quite well-to-do, and we don't have these kind of problems. You know, we don't have time for it, and we just don't have these kind of problems.
I see. We're above them.
I said, yes, ma'am, I understand the problem, but here you are, and here I am, and here you are with your therapist because you have severe headaches, so severe that they have to take you away in an ambulance when you start talking about this UFO thing. Why do you suppose that might be? Well, anyway, long story short is I pulled out a black light and said, do you mind if I check you with this? And she said, of course, I had another investigator there and her psychotherapist, and she said, well, not at all, go ahead. And I said, I just want to look at your exposed skin. And
what does a black light tell you?
What we found on this woman was in the invisible range below 400 nanometers. Using a black light, it excited a portion on the inside of her arm of a Mandelbrot set. A Mandelbrot set is a fractal.
Yes.
It's like the king of all fractals.
It's like a crop circle.
Exactly. And it was on the inside of her arm in brilliant blue. And she...
How did you even have the... how did you anticipate that you would find that? How did you know you would find that? What prior research had you done indicating...
I had to go back to... the surgical nurse asked me the same question. She said, I'm just stunned. I have to ask this question. She says, how do you come up with these flashes of intuition?
Yes.
Well, first of all, intuition shows up in your handwriting. I said, and it's in mine. But intuition is not something you can necessarily trust. It's just something you use.
So the nurse and I both want to know, how did you even know to look?
First of all, I suspected, and let's put the police hat back on. If a crime has been committed, in my view, there are crimes. If a crime of abduction has been done, and
absolutely,
if it's real, if these events are real, it is incumbent upon us as abductees or anyone else investigating this to make a case. We don't sit around and talk stories.
I'm with you.
We have to come up with evidence.
Good.
So I think that if I was seeing physical marks on these people in the visible light spectrum.
All right.
Well, the question is, there's other kinds of light.
35 seconds, and what I need to know is how you even knew to look with a black light.
I sensed that these entities see in the invisible range, and that's the reason it's almost impossible to photograph them, because they see your cameras on whenever you set them up.
So in other words, you were using an intuitive bit of knowledge.
That is correct.
And it was sort of a good guess is what it was.
According to a DSP satellite specialist who they use infrared, ultraviolet, and visible light to see plumes of nuclear missiles firing and this sort of thing to protect us. These 18 satellites called the DSP satellites.
Right.
When he met me in Los Angeles, he said, I've got the biggest question in the world. He said, how in the world could you possibly think that? And I said, because that's how they see.
Incidentally, just a quick note, a number of people have fast blasted to say, that's not the right recording you're playing of the earth tearing. Yes, it is. The recording I have is identical to the ones that others have sent. It's a rolling thunder, I guess would be described, kind of a rolling thunder, a horrible sound, and that is indeed there, along with the beeping. Now, my recording is one of the ones that came directly from the folks that did this, and I caught the alarms going off with it, so that's what you're hearing. But the fact that the rolling didn't come through to everybody, it did to some. As I go through, it's about 50-50. If your receiver didn't have a good bass response, you're not going to be able to hear it. But it was clearly there, along with the alarm sound. Some have a recording of just the rolling thunder sound alone, and that's fine. But for some people with small radios, small speaker systems, it's just not going to come through. So it was definitely there in spades, but you just couldn't hear it. Now, once again, with regard to Daryl Sims, Daryl, that's how I feel about it. People telling stories, interesting, even fascinating, but stories. When you get down to, we've pulled this from somebody's body, we've had it tested, and it's not of Earth origin, then you've placed your hand on something that's definitely a notch above in the proof category.
I think that's what it's all about. At some point, Art, we have to get away from just the stories, and since I've traveled worldwide and got over 1,000 cases worldwide, you have to. You're obviously, if the events are real, you're going to come up with certain things, features that work. Number one, traits or things that occur to abductees that are consistent worldwide in any language, whether they even where they live out in the bush of Brazil, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, that's right. If we ever want to prove this to the greater scientific community, we have to come up with just the kind of thing you're talking about right now. You're also talking about there's some woman apparently that you're aware of that has been, she feels, implanted, genetically inseminated, artificial insemination of some sort. Is that correct?
That is also correct. That is one of the most remarkable cases that came to me.
Tell me about
fascinating.
it. Tell me.
I was at a conference in the United States, and a lady came up to me, and about 10 o'clock at night, Bud Hopkins and I were all going to, several of us are going to dinner, and this elderly lady said, Mr. Sens, would you work with me? I've been waiting to see you for a long time. And I said, well, young lady, we're going to go eat, and this is a previous arranged meeting and all that, and I'll tell you what, if you're here when I get back, if you fill these forms out, I'll be glad to work with you.
But you were having dinner with
Dinner that
with
evening,
Bud?
we're leaving the next morning.
With Bud Hopkins?
Yes.
Got it.
So I came back about 11 o'clock, and a lovely lady was standing there with her little forms, about 20-page forms all filled out, sitting there in the middle of the night. I'm leaving the next morning, and
what are these standard abductee forms?
They're abduction forms that we put together, Dale Musser and myself, in 1992. We had them finalized, and they are become a standard in some circles. Quite effective for eliciting information. So so we went to my room and we sat down and talked. She says, I am a retired surgical nurse. And she says, so I know a lot about what I'm going to be telling you about. And I said, very good. I said, I prefer a professional if I can get that.
Of course.
And so what's your story? And she said, I've been to a hypnotist, and we get all the way up to an event where everything gets real foggy, and I see there are two entities. I can remember this even consciously. Said there's someone in the room, two people in the room, and I can't figure out what they're doing there. And then I'm just completely blocked. I can't figure anything out. She said, "Can you help me?" And I said, "Yes, I can." And she says, "Why couldn't the hypnotist get this information?" I said, "Because if your story is real," I said, "and I'm going to find that out real quick here, you're going to find out that the entity has placed a block inside your memory." And she said, "Why would they do that?" And I said, "Well, I really don't want to discuss all that with you. Let's find out, first of all, if you even have a real event or not." I said, we don't know that yet. And she said, "Well, the event is so severe that I divorced my husband over it." So she said, "This is not something I took lightly." And I said, "Why would you divorce your husband over this event?" She said, "We had decided not to have sex during this time. It was years ago, in the time of Betty and Barney Hill."
Yes.
And she describes almost the exact same procedure, up to the point where she goes, everything gets real dark and she can't figure anything out.
No, wait a minute. They didn't have sex, so there was no chance that they were going to have a pregnancy, right?
She was not going to have a pregnancy. She wanted to finish up the end of her work, and then she would become the housewife, so to speak, and stay at home, and they would have their children. They were going to really plan this thing out very well.
But unexpectedly, obviously,
and she wakes up in the middle of the night here, and there's semen all over her stomach, and her husband's sound asleep, and she wakes up and just slaps him silly, and he thinks she's completely insane, and she says, she says all kinds of expletives about what happened to her. Yes. And there's no other explanation, of course, than him, and he doesn't have a clue what in the world's going on. Well, he denied it, and she accused him of it, and basically they're both telling the truth. Neither one of them know the whole story, and they divorced over it. And so I kind of butted in, and I said, "Now, wait a minute. What happened next?" She said, "Well, I became pregnant." And I said, "Well, now, wait. You're saying that you woke up with semen all over your stomach, two people are in the room you don't know, short people, and you can't describe them, and your husband's sound asleep, you divorced him over this matter." She says, "Yes."
So that's the part I don't get. She divorced him, or he divorced her?
She divorced him.
She divorced him. But yet she's aware that she has to be aware, if there's two other people in the room, that it just wasn't hubby in a bad dream.
Well, she couldn't put together the idea. First of all, these are normal people. There aren't any aliens. I mean, normal people don't have these type things, and this can't happen.
True enough.
This can't happen. So it was him. It had to be. So she said, she said, well, I became pregnant. What do you think? And I said,
I think we guys always get the raw deals.
I said, so you, then the fetus disappeared in the first trimester.
Disappeared.
And she looked at me puzzled and said, why are you saying that? I said, well, I don't know.
You made the guess that it disappeared?
I just made the guess because you hear these stories
over and
so much.
over again. It's true.
And
yes.
she says she's puzzled because she doesn't know. She is not in the UFO anything, and she doesn't understand what I'm even talking about.
Right.
And I said, well, I'm just going to shut up and let you tell your story.
Okay.
And she said, okay. She said, no. I said, well, no. Then the fetus disappeared in the second trimester, which is real unusual. She said, why are you saying these things? She said, no, I had a full-term pregnancy.
Oh.
I said, whoa, stop the bus.
Right.
Are you telling me, claiming that you have a full-term pregnancy due to what may have been some type of artificial insemination? She said, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she said, now, Mr. Sims, I told you I was a surgical nurse, and I'm not somebody who just walks in here with some wild story. I've been a surgical nurse for 35 years, and I've seen about everything.
Well, Daryl, it is a pretty wild story.
Can
I ask a question?
Sure.
This baby was born normally, you're telling me?
My first question to her was there anything unusual about the birth of your child? She said yes.
Uh-huh.
She said, I don't know how to describe this any other way. I said, just tell me in your own words. She said, my son looked like a human grasshopper when he was born.
Huh. Sorry.
She said,
a human grasshopper?
She said he was the strangest looking child. She said he's normal now. She said, but he was not normal when he was born. He was so odd looking.
Did she get photographs?
She did have some photographs. They were not really clear enough that I got any impression, because this is quite a while ago when these were taken. I mean, with old box cameras and the whole 9 yards. So I said, okay, let's, now you've interested me enough to find out if your story is verifiable.
And where now was little grasshopper?
Well, I asked her, I said, is he okay? And she said, yeah, he's perfectly normal now. And I said, has he had a troubled childhood? And she said, you have no idea. And I said, well, would your son be available for some type of DNA test?
Indeed. And
she said, I don't think there would be a problem. Well, I already have hair samples currently, and the next thing we'll do is get a swab inside the mouth and send it off. And
so you haven't done that yet? Because
we're fixing to do that.
Oh, my goodness.
So she says, well, now, wait a minute. She said, what do you think we'll find? And I said, well, let me work with you a bit. Let me, first of all, see if I think there's anything to your story.
Retro question.
Beyond that.
Retro question, Daryl.
Yes.
Why had there not been a test with regard to paternity for support of little grasshopper?
First of all, she's divorced from her husband, and it's the strangest thing with many abductees. They never, ever, it's almost as if these people are told not to look or not to look for evidence. It's one of the reasons it's difficult to get abductees to even come forward with evidence. And I've done this in support groups and asked people, how many of you people ever feel like you've had a medical procedure of some kind by these entities? And almost every hand will go up. How many of you people will go down and get an X-ray for me tomorrow or this week or this month? And all hands will go down.
Well, why do you think
they won't do it? Because they're instructed not to do it. These entities do not want anyone having any evidence of their existence.
Yeah, I suppose not.
Let's keep it in the nebulous.
I suppose so. And I guess if you buy Part A, you got to buy Part B. They wouldn't want what they were doing known.
Well, to connect the dots for me, when I went into the Central Intelligence Agency during the Vietnam War, one of the things I found out in my training, and of course I didn't sit there and tell them that I was previously an abductee or anything like that, but one of the things I noticed about our training and the things that we did in the company was we did two things primarily. One is we lied, and we lied consistently about everything.
And so you began on the right line foot, and you didn't tell them about your abduction experience. Now, see, when you apply to the CIA, it's bad form to do that.
Would not be hired probably or taken into the company under that range. So I found out that based on our training, everything we were doing, the entities had been doing the same thing in my life and in the lives of other people, doing the same thing. To me, it looked like an intelligence project.
What, if I might ask, did you do for the CIA?
I was it was called sheep dipping. Sheep dipping is a process where the Central Intelligence Agency goes in and takes military people. And I volunteered during the Vietnam War for that effort. And I was at Fort Gordon at military police school. And while there, about 70 of us were asked to go to a special building. And we had no idea why we had been picked or chosen or anything. We had no idea that we'd all been looked at long before. And when we were sent to this building, and we asked, there were 3 people there, and they asked us a lot of questions, and they pretty much cleaned out the room with the exception of about 20 people. And I was one of the ones that was left, and they asked all kinds of questions after that, and then they singled us out and interviewed us. And I kept asking questions. I said, wait a minute, I need to know some questions. Why are you guys all dressed in suits? Are you military? They said, yes. I said, are you CID? That means Criminal Investigation Division and Military Police, which these guys dress in suits. There are detectives. I'm in military police school, but that doesn't mean you don't know about the military police.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so are you CID? And they said, no. I said, why are you out of uniform, sir? He said, I can't tell you that. Well, unbeknownst to us, these are military liaison. They're the sheep dippers. They're basically the people who go into the military and pick out what they want for their particular projects, for their covert operation projects.
All right. Let me try again. What were you doing for the CIA?
What I was doing with the Central Intelligence Agency was providing a number of security, for one, and second, I also taught martial arts in the Central Intelligence Agency to dependents and some of their personnel. One of the purposes of what we were doing ultimately in the entire effort was to take JOTs, or junior officer trainees, people who are recruited at universities and colleges. If they meet the criteria, and especially if they have specialized language skills, like Farsi and Chinese and appropriate languages, they would be taken, and if they, again, pass those tests and so on, and pass their top-secret clearance and other evaluations, then they would be sent to one of 3 different installations in the United States, top-secret installations for CIA training. And I was at one of those areas. That's where I participated.
As a teacher, eventually?
One of the things, no, not necessarily. When they found out what skills I had after I got there, when my primary function was providing security for covert operations and, gosh, this is, this is kind of
you're not supposed to talk
ugly.
About this? Ugly?
Well, some of the stuff we did.
Oh no, go right ahead. If it's ugly, I can handle ugly.
It was just.
I can handle ugly. Go ahead.
One of the things that happened while I was in the company years ago is they borrowed somebody from another continent, Angola in particular.
Borrowed.
And it was we had a communist problem down in Angola, and one of the things that happened was an individual there, one of the leaders in that effort.
Don't other peoples call that kidnapping?
Actually, it is.
Yes. You borrowed a person.
They borrowed him, but he never knew where he was at.
Yes.
In fact, our methods were so effective that.
What did you do with this borrowed person?
Well, I didn't do anything with him. My part of the operation was to provide security for operations that were ongoing. And later, I found out what it actually
you provided security for the loan officers.
I didn't find out until later what was actually going on, what I was providing security for.
Right. Yeah, I understand. You only get your part of any.
Well, I was really surprised because there was one of our guys who works in who is a civilian. Are you ready for this? He's a civilian with a top secret clearance, working there in in the Public Works Department with an AK-47, like he was from some other country, dressed appropriately. This individual, when he apparently got here,
this is getting pretty
didn't
strange.
know that he never knew he was in America. Never ever knew any of this. This was like something out of Mission Impossible.
It's getting strange, definitely.
He never knew. In fact, when he was allowed to get out and walk the grounds during the day, I later found out, he even found gum wrappers from the place he was supposed to be at that they had accidentally left there for him to find, of course. They even imported the bugs from the country he was supposed to be at in the little prison that they had.
So he'd feel right at home.
There was no way you could not know that you were in the country you were supposed to be.
Boy, that's strange. I give you that. That's strange. So they didn't even want him to know he'd been borrowed, or, well...
Well, the curious thing about me was and all the stuff that I saw go on in the company, the alien was doing the exact same thing to us. They lied, and they lied consistently.
And borrowed all the time.
Exactly.
Daryl, when you think really hard, or not so hard about all we've been discussing, these are really extraordinary claims you're making. The latest having to do with your military record and the CIA.
I get people that from time to time ask me, how in the world could you be in the CIA if you were in the Army? It's real simple.
Well, actually, you've told us.
It's actually quite easy. And the interesting thing is that here's something I like to hand to my detractors. There is a thing called a questionnaire for public trust positions. It's equivalent to the standard form 85P US, used by the Office of Personnel Management.
Yes.
Thing's about 41 pages in length. If you fill that out and you sign it,
yes,
you commit a federal crime if you sign that, knowing that there are errors on it. Everything that I've told you concerning my military police record as a senior military police officer, 95B40, including my private investigations license and so on,
yes,
all these other things, all that stuff that's listed, it's a federal felony for you to lie on that form.
Okay.
I mean, I literally am handing somebody what they need. If you want to get me, this is the way to do it. If I never was in the CIA, in fact, when I talked about being a martial arts instructor for civilian and for some of their personnel as well, which I did this on for a while there, there is a letter that went to Langley from our installation by our station chief. And he forwarded this, and there are approximately, there must be about approximately 20 names. I haven't counted them. But those names that are all hand signatures on that recommendation letter to of how well I'm conducting my classes and
yes,
all of this sort of thing. If you'll get Frank Agee's book, The Expose on the Central Intelligence Agency, he's the case officer that finally turned on the company.
It is listed in there?
Those 20, the number of those people are mentioned. The signatures on there are in his book on the people he exposed as station chiefs all over the world. They're handwritten on my documentation.
Okay.
There again, you can go ahead and fake a document like that if you want to, but it's a felony.
All right. In addition, do you have any military records remaining?
Of course, you have what is called a DD Form 214.
Right.
DD Form 214.
Any of this reflected on your 214? Here's the deal with here's how you get sheep dipped. Here's how they cover that. When the Central Intelligence Agency or any other branch decides to take you like that in the intelligence community, if they want to do this, you just stay on record as in the military, and what happens is you get transferred to wherever it is you're supposed to be. Your record just basically on goes, but where you were at in terms of I can imagine
your function is not going to show up.
Yeah, I see why. Yeah, I suppose so.
But it does show where I was at. It shows, but it's not going to say Central Intelligence Agency on it. But now the records that I have personally that were given to me for my trustworthiness and everything else as a martial arts teacher and so on, And, of course, the photographs that I have are on the installation and from the installation. And it's definitely the Central Intelligence Agency.
So you're basically an abductee who became an investigator, who wanted to know so much what happened to him that he became an investigator. Is that fair?
Well, it's not as flamboyant as that. It's not even that good a story. It's much more simple. I was willing to let all this kind of be okay with me. I mean, I really didn't like the abduction business, but it stopped, and so I could deal with it. The problem is my son became an abductee at age 6.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem is with me, it's just real simple. You mess with me, and I can live with it. You mess with my children, and I'll come after you. So I basically started hunting the predator at that point.
Daryl,
it became personal.
What do you believe the motivation for most abductions is?
I wished I knew the answer to all that, but I think we can at least come up with some.
Please do.
Some preliminary things, at least.
Reproduction.
I don't know. I don't have a handle on this business of what it is that they seem to be interested in genetically.
Well,
we know that 45%
inseminating people.
Artificial insemination. Apparently, this takes place. Betty and Barney Hill, they reported it. This lady, this surgical nurse, she reported it. There again, as I told her, I said eventually, I think what we're going to find, and I said after our case was over, I told her, I said, what I think we're going to find is if your story is true. And I said, and I still don't know if it is or isn't, but if it is true, what we're going to find is that your husband is not the daddy, but then that's not going to surprise anybody, really. They're just going to say you slept with someone. She's a very moral lady. She would take that very personally if someone said that to her face. She'd probably slap you. The second thing I said that I think we're going to find with some of these ladies, if their pregnancy comes to term, is that the mother is probably not going to be the mommy.
Is the DNA going to reveal itself to be in any way non-human or beginning to be non-human in some manner?
Again, I'm sure there are people in the audience love to hear a different story on this. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Okay.
I think what's going to happen in some of these cases where there's strong evidence of this, we're going to find that the mommy and the daddy are not the mommy and daddy of the child. And then they're not going to be adopted. There's going to be an actual birth record.
Not only the daddy's DNA
not even the mommy.
But so the DNA will be separate from both the dad and the mom.
Look at the story. Suppose the stories of them taking eggs and sperm from different abductees is true. What would be a logical assumption that one would take if those stories are true? Well, you would create an artificial insemination. In other words, the lady might become basically an incubator.
Right.
Well, it wouldn't be her child. That's what I think we may find.
You think that's going to turn out to be the case with
Grasshopper? I don't know with her, but I'm pretty sure we're going to find out that the husband's not the daddy. I think that's going to be real clear. But in some cases, I think, because we've got actually 3 of these cases, not one, Art. I have 3 cases like this.
Right, and I've heard,
the children
I must say, Daryl, I've heard of many others. This is not exactly unique. This whole genetic artificial insemination, sexual aspect to abduction, when you really get to know somebody, you really get to know them, like Whitley Strieber, for example. Maybe sometimes years later, even though we've known each other very well, it came out one night spontaneously on the air that there was, in fact, a sexual aspect to it. And to most abductions, when you dig deep enough, you find out something like that's in there.
Art, we have, of course, one of the reasons that this is not spoken a lot about is because, number one, it doesn't sell. 2 things won't sell in the UFO field. One is the sexual aspect of what these entities do to you as a child, and they don't do it to everybody, but there often is a sexual aspect of it to children.
Well, it sells in every other kind of novel. Sex sells, Daryl.
Well, the problem with this is if you're selling certain kinds of books in the field, that this and the human aspect of it, where death or severe trauma occurs, that's not a very good seller. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear they're here to save the planet, fix the ozone hole, or whatever. And I'm sorry, they're not here. If they were going to do that, they'd have done it thousands of years ago, and they didn't.
The cosmic Maytag man who got a wake-up call. Yeah, not that. So if we screw it up, we do it all on our own.
Exactly. Take responsibility for it.
But still, this is such a personal, private intrusion. I mean, rape carries with it one of the heaviest sentences behind bars you can get, for a good reason. And that's what this is. As a former law enforcement person, I don't see how you can see it any other way. As borrowed equals kidnapping. Kidnapping and artificial insemination equal that and rape.
Well, to me, that there again goes back to the same old thing concerning my own child. You know, when stuff like this happens to your own children, then you later find, that your brother's an abductee, you're an abductee, your son's an abductee.
You found out your brother was too.
Well, it gets better.
Well, we know
my other brother marries a lady, and she's an abductee, and her mother's an abductee. He later divorces her, marries another lady, and the entire family are abductees. I mean, and these people are the type of people, we don't have those kind of problems.
All right.
And they describe everything exactly.
I have talked to other guests. One comes to mind from the Bay Area some years ago who said that they're all over the place. They're grown adults. You pass them on the street, you don't know it. There are a lot of, in quotes, them here. Do you believe that?
I don't have any. I do not have any. I have the stories of that, but I've never met any of them, so to speak. I definitely have abductees who are as credible, and I guarantee you would be glad to have them on there are people in the medical field, some of them doctors. I mean, one of them is in the who's who of Houston is for doctors, an abductee. I've got the 3 abductees that are NASA scientists. I mean, which of these people do you not like? So these are credible, decent people, and it's not that you have to be a doctor or anything to be credible anyway. People are just because someone sees something, hears something, or feels something that most others have not experienced doesn't make them a liar. As Travis Walton says, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. You know, it's just not true.
Travis Walton is absolutely, I think, in my mind, the best case that I ever heard about. As you know, I interviewed him at great length several times. And the story never screwed up. The story was right on from everybody involved. It wasn't just one witness, it was many witnesses, as you know.
Well, he told me one time, he said, well, I was missing for days here, and he said, they said for days. He said, I thought it was 20 minutes. And I said, how do you explain the disparity? He says, I don't have an answer for that, Daryl. And I said, maybe I can give you one that'll help you. He said, okay. I said, suppose you were traveling at a relativistic speed. How long would you be gone?
Right.
He says, oh. And I said, to us, back here, it might be days.
Yeah, that's
it might be 20 minutes to you.
Travis necessarily would have considered, but I'm telling you, I really carefully interviewed this man, his boss, and so forth and so on. That really happened. There's no question in my mind that really happened.
Very decent.
It's a real story.
Upstanding guy.
Yeah, absolutely. It really happened.
100%.
Now, we all want to know if this is true. Fantastic as much of it sounds, and you would have to delve into it, and you can if you want to, by the way. I'm sure we can give you ways that you can get behind Daryl Sims' work and decide for yourself its veracity. Daryl, you've got a website?
Yes, I do. www.alienhunter.org.
Alienhunter.org. So you're
write me. You can just click on Alien Hunter there, and it'll email me, and I'd love to hear from you. I don't care if you agree, disagree, like it, or don't like it. It really doesn't make me any difference because I have a real simple philosophy.
And
I am not here to make anyone believe anything. That is not my purpose. If anyone thinks that's the reason I'm here, you've missed my whole point to being here tonight.
Well, what is your whole point in being here?
My point in being here is to
are you alerting
show,
people?
In fact, there is in fact credible evidence that people can review if they choose to. If they.
What I mean, Daryl, is do you feel like you're warning people, just informing people? You want them to know that they are here, that they are doing something, but we don't know what?
I think that they, whoever they are have been here for quite a while. I think they've been through various, in various cultures. You can go back, in my opinion, and see their handiwork. When you go back to the Irish, as an example, 45% of our abductees are Native American Indian Irish, and which is a staggering number. If you look at this, even in the Irish, you find the stories of their little people, and you find fairies and gnomes.
And you said 45% are Irish?
45% are Native American Irish that are abductees that we work with. We just were stunned at the number.
That is amazing. I wonder.
I'm Native American Indian Irish myself, so this is one of the things I started looking for, and we were just shocked to see that number that high among the cases we worked with. 31% of these people, up to 31%, because this fluctuates based on your database.
Do you have any guesses about why?
Well, in the case where we have 31% of abductees, in some cases, reporting rare drug allergies to procaines, one way that you might have an allergy to something is to actually be infected or affected by it in some way. In other words, someone may have given you procaines in some way or another, either through injections or whatever. Over a period of time, you finally became allergic to it. But procaine allergies are extremely rare. In fact, if you tell your doctor I have a procaine allergy, he'll probably laugh at you and say they're so rare that it doesn't, we never even test for them.
All right, Daryl, again, are you trying to warn people, inform people? What message are you trying to send out?
I'd like to inform people and for them to make their own decision. And everybody has their own level of where they want to enter that or accept it, I suppose.
Okay, you're well aware, I know, that there are a number of people who are quite pleased with the fact that they have an implant. They're absolutely okay with it. You know that?
Yes. We have several of them.
How much of a percentage do you think that group makes up?
First of all, I want to make this very clear to your audience. There are a lot of stories about a lot of people being implanted, and first of all, your audience does need to know this, that I look at hundreds of x-rays every year worldwide.
Right.
My trouble. I mean, hundreds of them.
Right.
And I find almost no, maybe less than 1% of people who have an object that may be referred to as an implant. And in a number of those, you'll find that many of the objects that you're finding there, assuming that it's a real object and it's not just a mistake on the x-ray or whatever, that in fact many of those are due to something else, such as a guy that claimed he had never had a previous surgery, yet we found a clavicular screw in his shoulder. Well, I'm sorry, the aliens didn't do that. That's from a previous surgery. You may not have known it, you may have forgotten it, or you may not have told the truth. But the fact is, that's a human device there. And implants are extremely rare. I think that the implanted or embedded objects, as I like to use the term, embedded objects are there for a purpose. I think a lot of them that we're finding are leftovers. They're old.
On that show,
many of them have been moved.
On that show, I like Dr. House. He says, frankly, patients lie. All patients lie.
Well, I had one case where we removed a device from a guy's jaw, and he claimed it was inserted there by some intelligence community. And I said, well, you don't really fit the criteria of a quote-unquote alien abductee. And I said, but I'm going to go ahead and spend the money and the time on you to take you through the surgery to find out what this is, because you claim that there are programming voices in your head and all this stuff. And he said, that's true. Well, we removed the object, and it turned out to be a normal piece of lead, like from the spatter effect from, a grenade or some, a bullet or something like that. But it was not, there was nothing unusual in any.
Woodward and Bernstein, got to the bottom of Watergate because they took the advice of, at that time, Deep Throat and followed the money. Daryl, do you do all this for money?
It certainly isn't for money, first of all, and I thank you for asking that question.
Really?
I mean that from my heart.
You do?
We have never charged anyone for any procedure we've done, either surgical or even the paper we let these people write on, we pay for ourselves. There is no fee.
When you say we, you refer to...
I have a team of about 30 scientists and doctors and other people that work with me.
All right.
From all over the world.
Well, that's a good answer. So you never take a penny.
They volunteer their time.
So you never take a penny.
Not a penny. Not a dime.
Okay, that's impressive.
Not money.
Definitely impressive. I guess I want to go back to the very beginning of the show. You know, you said you weren't sure if these were aliens or if these were entities of some other sort, religious, dimensional. The possibilities are nearly endless, Daryl.
Yes.
You're not at all sure in that category. Are they from Planet X? Are they from...
I don't think so, but the fact is that I don't think anyone ultimately really at this point knows, because, like I said, they function just like we did in the intelligence community. We lied, and we lied about everything. That's the nature of intelligence. That's what we do. It's called deception.
Yeah.
That's what the business was about. And if you're not very good at it, then you lose and the other side wins. And I don't see the difference in this phenomena. I don't see the difference. Everywhere I find subterfuge. I find where these people have been deceived. We had a mass abduction of 8 people in Houston and in another state, all 8 taken at the same time, same place, all described the exact same location. 2 of them came back with implanted devices. 1 of them we retrieved from a lady's eye.
If you had to guess, I know you hate to do that, and I realize I'm asking you to guess about what their motivation is in doing all of this, what would you say? Daryl?
Yes, I'm here.
If you had to guess about their motivation, what would you say?
Well, the motivation of the individual, first of all...
Of the entities, what they want.
The entities themselves.
What's their motivation?
Well, first of all, I think the perception that's generally accepted in the UFO field is incorrect, and I'll explain that. The general view of the UFO field is that there is a lateral view, like a lineup, basically, in a police situation, where you're looking at your perpetrators or possible perps.
Yes.
And here you have the little entity, the little tiny guy that picks everybody up. Usually that's reported in their abduction scenarios. They basically are the pizza delivery guys, as I call them. They pick you up. You're just nothing more than pizza to them. I mean, they're either picking up or delivering.
They borrow you.
That's it. Then you get to get brought to a guy, in most cases, that looks similar to him, but he's taller and a lot smarter. The little guys, the first ones you meet are about like a 286 computer with legs. They're not really that intelligent. They're designed to do certain functions and nothing more.
And they take you to Father Pentium.
They pretty much. And he's often referred to by many abductees as the doctor or the guy that's going to do the exam on you and take care of you or whatever is going to happen. Then you may encounter a mantis-like being. You may encounter a human-type being and others. In that, but what I think the UFO people, the UFO community in general has missed, and there again, I could be wrong here, but this is just my perception after 38 years of looking at this thing. My thinking is that there are several tiers of this, and the reason I say that is because in my last event, the guys that showed up were not the guys that showed up in the first event or in the other events for 13 years. And this was I had a group full of people up in Tampa, Florida. The room was full of engineers and pretty educated people. One individual sitting in that room was worth $52 million that I knew about. And they asked a number of questions about my experiences, and I said, well, most of you people sitting in this room think they came here to save the planet. And I said, that's not my view, so you probably won't want to hear my view. And they said, we really do.
I want to hear your view.
And I said, well, in my last experience, I said, I've never described the entities because I want people to describe them for me, because if you can't describe them accurately, then you simply weren't there. It's just that simple, and I've had 8 people be able to answer that question.
Okay, if they're not here to save the planet, then what are they here for?
These entities are here, the second tier and higher are the one that make those decisions about what is to be done. And I think that based on what we're seeing, that the generational effects, how they seem to have followed us for who knows for how many generations, but
the answer to the question is
that I think that there is an interest that they have in us, not that they're breeding things into us as some people believe, but it would make more sense to me that they were breeding things out of our lineage, not into it.
Out of. So they want something in our DNA is the answer?
Or they simply, for instance, suppose it were a problem for them that a lineage was a problem. Wouldn't it be better to try to manipulate that lineage if you couldn't do something else? Then you might alter the... what's the difference in lab rats? If you have a series of lab rats and you've got this one series of lab rats that will not comply, they will not obey. Now, you can either get rid of the lab rats or you can try to alter them genetically. But you're going to have to get rid of that problem, or you're going to have a problem with those lab rats from then on. Problems that could create problems for you if you had an agenda that...
All right. Are you suggesting that then, to them, we are as lab rats are to us?
I think the abductee and the contactee mentality shows it beautifully. For instance, if you're very compliant and you like your experience, or you think you like your experience, you're referred to as a contactee.
Yes.
If you don't, and the little genetic engineer, so to speak, picks you up and handles you, and if it's me in this scenario, then I'm probably going to bite him. And he's probably going to thump me on the head and tell me I will remember instead of you won't remember.
Yeah.
And my experiences are going to be pretty unpleasant because I didn't cooperate.
Right.
And I didn't, and I didn't intend to, and I think that may be part of the reason they...
So the difference between an abductee and a contactee,
sure.
One who has grown to enjoy it.
I can't see the mentality.
And I did ask you earlier a question that you didn't answer. I asked, how many of this type are there, do you believe? What percentage of total abductees do you think are quite satisfied with their lot?
I think that about 25% to 30% of abductees go along with it. They, in my opinion, have got the Stockholm syndrome from the Alien that they've literally identified with their captor.
Right.
I think that's as true as anything in the world. That argument came up between me and Dr. John Mack when I was in Istanbul, Turkey. He said, what we're finding is vastly different than what you're finding in some respects. He said a lot of our experiences are more, they're more of a...
Would you say you have contempt for these people?
For the entities?
No. For the people that are satisfied with their lot of
not
being
at all.
implanted.
I think they have...
It almost sounded like it.
They have... they've made a choice that they've chosen to accept, and I have to respect that because there are people who actually do have experiences that are not horrific, and they really were not bad. There are other people that had horrific experiences, and they simply were instructed you won't remember, and they simply didn't. However, when you use memory retrieval techniques with them, you find quite a different story.
Many people are critical of memory recovery techniques, as I'm sure you're aware. In hypnosis, the power of suggestion, for example, is very strong. And it can easily be misused, with the net effect being it is actually suggested to them that they had some specific experience.
I agree that can happen. The fact is that I did a demonstration down in Ventura, a UFO group in California, just about 2 years ago, and I took a hypnotist out of the crowd. This was in front of therapists and psychiatrists was present, and other professionals were there as well.
Right.
And I hypnotized the hypnotist and did what you would refer to as a stage hypnosis. In other words, we had a lot of fun. I had her to hallucinate all kinds of things, being in a bus and a bumpy ride and all kinds of fun stuff. Everybody's laughing. And then I brought her out of this state, and I looked at her and smiled and I said, tell us about it. She did. And I said, it was very real, wasn't it? She said, yes. And I said, young lady, you didn't go anywhere. We saw you right here. There was no bus. There was no bus driver. There was no rain. There was no heat. Nothing.
Right.
She said, that's true. I said, but it was very real to you. She said, that's true. I took another lady without hypnosis who I knew was an abductee. I had talked to her earlier that day, and without hypnosis was able to speak to her just watching her linguistic patterns, and had her access memory that she had blocked. But she was able to recover that memory very quickly and very powerfully without any hypnosis whatsoever. So I was showing these people that you don't have to have memory recovery. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be hypnotized.
If it's not tripped by hypnosis, then what's another way to bring it on?
Well, first of all, there are different techniques that are actually used for this. Dr. Haynes uses a technique, non-hypnosis technique, to recover memory. It's very effective, very conscious.
Give me an idea of how it works.
A good example is you can, and I took two. A best example of this is one is called a transderivational search. This is called a kinesthetic or a touch transderivational search, where you can literally have a person recall the very first time they ever saw. For instance, if the entity was wonderful and kind and sweet and wonderful to them, you can take them back to the very first event, the very first time.
But I'm asking about the means for taking this person back. If not hypnosis, then what is the means? The
means is the body will make a series of associations all the way back to the very first time if you use proper linguistic patterns and encode, because the memory encodes in certain ways. And if you understand that, they'll go back to the very first memory, which is often quite horrific.
Okay.
Not the kind, sweet memory that they were sitting here smiling about the moment.
So it may be non-hypnosis, but it's still a suggestion technique. Yes?
Not really. This particular technique is very, the reason the PhD psychologists love it, the reason I've taught it to them, is because it's not suggestive, and it can pull up all kinds of things.
It involved linguistics, right? In other words, putting...
No, it's difficult. That's why I wish you had been there, because when you see this, it's just stunning to see the difference between hypnosis and something very conscious, non-suggested. But the fact is that you also have memory markers that occur in your memory.
All right, maybe I could understand it this way. Suppose I were an abductee. What would you say to me to initiate this process?
Well, one of the things that we do is just simply have you fill out a questionnaire. The questionnaire will tell me a lot about you.
I hate questionnaires.
I know, and this one is rather interesting. And when people finish it, they literally...
And I bet they lie, too.
Well, the nice thing is I'm a handwriting analyst. One of the things I look at when you fill this form out is your writing in it. When I get that form, I'm looking at your handwriting. If you have a propensity to be a liar, that shows up in your handwriting. If you have a propensity to exaggerate, that shows up in your handwriting.
I've heard this.
So I'm looking at every bit of this when I talk to these people.
I've held you here with a battery of questions when really I have an audience that wants to ask some. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Daryl Sims. Hi.
Yes, hi. Thanks for this opportunity to ask us.
You're going to have to yell at us when you're not talking.
Thanks for the opportunity for this question. Daryl, it was mentioned in your bio that you do hypnosis anesthesia, and I was wondering, being a person myself that needs really serious surgery and cannot have any anesthesia, if it's something that you teach or that you are present to do.
Oh, that's a very good question.
It's a very fair question. First of all, I have done hypnotic anesthesia in the OR as well as outpatient basis with people. I do that, but if you're in an area where I am not, I can recommend people, hypnotic anesthesia therapists that can work with you.
Are you saying it's real, Daryl? I've always wondered about that. You can hypnotize a person and say, look, somebody's going to cut into your flesh, and it's not going to hurt. This will not hurt. And you can so impress them that indeed, a doctor can begin to open somebody up and it won't hurt.
In one of our films, I'm actually doing full hypnotic anesthesia with a lady in California.
That could have been a simple yes or no.
Yes,
achieve
the answer
that?
is yes, and the doctor was sitting there freaking out. He said, I can't believe I'm cutting on this woman with no anesthesia. This has got to be killing her. And she told me later, she said, tell that doctor to keep his big mouth shut. I'm not asleep. I heard every word he said.
That's incredible.
So she emails me. I'll be glad to give her the information.
All right,
she requires.
okay, all right. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Daryl Sims. Good morning. Hello.
Hello, East of the Rockies.
That's you, all right.
Hello, it's nice to talk with you again, Art. It's Amanda from the Carolinas.
Good to talk to you.
I have a comment and then a question. I had many experiences when I was growing up that you don't have time to go into, but in 1976, I actually remember seeing a grave.
Yes.
And in 1980, I started having deep puncture marks in my body, always at the base where your neck and your head meet.
Right.
And between my eyes, and now in other places. And after these things, I would be so weak I couldn't even walk the next day. And I blew something out of my nose one day that was a silver thing, I guess about a half an inch long. And I mentioned it to somebody, and then a few days later, I had another puncture mark.
If I may, what did you do with this thing you...
I tried to hang on to it, Art, and it disappeared. I mean, I don't know if it was taken or what. But after I had mentioned it to somebody else and talked with it, it's no longer in my possession. What happened to it, I can't tell you exactly, but...
All right. Daryl, I bet you've heard a million stories like that, right?
I'm sitting here giggling because abductees are instructed to destroy or get rid of evidence to make sure things disappear.
So you're telling me she probably got rid of it? So she got rid of it herself?
She could have, and not even known what she did. I know one man that had an object that attached to his back. He pulled it off. It was metallic. He was freaked out about it. Threw it in the commode. Flushed the commode. He said, what in the world have I done? And he actually jumped in the commode with both hands and tried to get it and retrieve it and lost it. But he said, I couldn't believe I destroyed my own evidence. Why would I do that? And I said, I don't know. Why don't you ask your captors?
I've actually heard that story. Now, where did I hear that story? Was that from you? No, others. I've heard it from others who do what you do and investigate this sort of thing, that people actually have destroyed their own evidence and then suddenly said, what the hell did I do that for?
Exactly. That's why physical evidence in this field is difficult to acquire. It's not that it doesn't exist. You can find fluorescence on these abductees within 24 hours.
Oh, yeah, we've got a hit on fluorescence.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean,
when did you discover this fluorescence phenomena?
The fluorescence was discovered in 1992. The first case was a millionaire lady that I mentioned, and we found a Mandelbrot set on the inside of her arm.
Right.
Some of the fluorescence is due to physical touch. It's like the best way to describe it is alien sweat.
Since the little crop circle under her arm, since that moment, how much more fluorescence have you done with what results?
We have found a plethora of...
You know, you've got to absolutely love the Internet. Benjamin in Paris, France, says, Art, we've spoken on several occasions. Please, if you would, Art, refer to the books of Dr. David Jacobs. I've read Secret Life and the Threat. Mr. Sims would just be more objective in his findings and less emotional. Perhaps he'd be taken more seriously. Well, I don't know about that part of it, but I do want to ask you about the threat. Dr. Jacobs is one of only a very few people like yourself, Daryl, that I talk to that clearly suggests, you know, the people who think these are all warm, fuzzy little creatures ought to probably be themselves examined. I mean, he may not go quite that far, but that they're not necessarily warm and fuzzy. Their intentions toward us are not necessarily good, and that's a very minimal view in ufology.
First of all, I met Dr. Jacobs in Brasilia when he stood in a line of about 50 people, waited his turn, and whenever he finally got to me to speak after my presentation, he looked at me and said, Daryl, I am sad to say that I am not familiar with your work, He said, first of all, I'm stunned that there is physical evidence. I did not know there was that kind of volume of evidence. And he said, and I just want to apologize that I am not more familiar with your work.
Well,
that was Dr. Jacobs' statement to me.
Yeah, well, that said, it's irrelevant with regard to what I asked about. His main tenet is that these, whatever they are, don't have our best interests in mind, Daryl. Do you agree, disagree with that?
I don't think they have our interests in mind, and I don't even think they have the first group that come to us, the ones that we see 99% of the time, they're not in charge anyway. They're just doing what they're instructed. The question we need to be asking is who sent them and why? Who's the boss?
Yeah, good question. Anybody get any answers? Anybody get any answers yet to that one?
Some of the answers that I came up with was in my last event. The entities that showed up there were in fact different than the others, and the best way I could describe them, if I could describe them, from my point of view, and it's strictly personal, is that they acted more like something like the SS of the alien. I mean, they were there to enforce business. They were not there to give you any medical advice or do this or that or an examination or anything else.
Right.
They were there to terrorize.
To terrorize?
That was my viewpoint of the event.
That's quite a leap. And it certainly is a giant leap from those who are satisfied and perfectly happy with their implant, and they think they are contactees, and they act in some happy little manner, transferring the word that all's going to be well and so forth, right?
They do try to leave that impression, but the fact is, whenever you're lying there with something inserted in your up your nasal passage and you're screaming, it's highly likely that that's not exactly the true event.
All right. Back to the phones. Wildcard line, your turn with Daryl Sims. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Art, for your hardball questioning. Daryl, I'm a 60-year-old ex-aerospace engineer, and frighteningly, I have to say I find you 100% credible. Now, my question is, can you put your cop brain to sleep long enough to let the other side of the brain conjecture on really what the ultimate purpose of these individuals and their activities is?
Okay, that's really the bottom line one, Daryl. So how about it?
I'll do just exactly as you've instructed. In the final event, it seems to me, after the smoke clears and everything's on the cutting room floor, it all boils back down to the psychological and spiritual rape of an individual. They even the physical taking of these people,
abduction
and the things that they do to these people. It is unimaginable that any sentient being would do this for any reasonable purpose whatsoever. Some of the things absolutely make no sense when you talk to geneticists. Even the genetics aspect of this doesn't really make sense. You don't need hundreds of thousands and millions of subjects to get a genetic sample from a population. You just don't need that.
So then what? You think it's terror? That's the objective?
A case in point, yes, I do. And
okay.
Because in one case, the lady, here's a perfect example of how people get sued in the multi-million-dollar suits using hypnosis. The lady I worked with, the whole family had gone through a horrific event. It split the family. They later divorced over the series of events, of abduction events.
Right.
They couldn't deal with it as a family. They split up and went in all directions.
Right.
The lady finally came to me a year later and said, I want you to work with me. I did. And she described basically a terrible molestation, and she thought it was her own actual doctor. But I, knowing that wasn't her doctor, finally asked her, do you see him? And she said no. And I said, if you see any part of him, let me know. Well, at that point, she finally, I said at that point, this short time later, she saw long white fingers moving toward her, and he molested her. And she says, what? She kept crying and crying, but why would he do that to me? She was a very moral lady. And I said, think of him as a tape recorder.
Now, I can see how people would come up with that because it would, the mind wants to jump at the most logical thing it can grasp, something it knows. It must have been the doctor. No, I can see how that would happen.
She actually named her doctor.
Yeah, east of the Rockies. You're on there with Daryl Sims. Hello.
Hi, Art. First of all, I'd like to say welcome back.
Thank you.
Your voice has been missing for so long, and it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
I have a question for Daryl and also a question for you. And I'll just go ahead and spit them out and then let you answer them on the air.
Okay.
First of all, Daryl, do you think it's possible in any way that maybe these beings are us from the future coming back, and you pointed out that maybe they were trying to alter our DNA? Maybe there's something with the Earth changes that Art has spoken about so many times, where there's like a nuclear winter and we have to live underground.
Well, ma'am, if they're traveling through time and alter our DNA, they're altering their DNA.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In order to help us survive better, because maybe they're not able to survive as well. You know what I'm saying? To help make them be able to survive.
I know exactly what you're saying, Daryl. All of that as one possible explanation.
Well, first of all, I don't adhere to the time, the future time thing, and the reason is simple. If there was a problem, they would have already solved it. We would not even be knowing this. They could go. They could come back from the future, fix everything, and there'd be no problem. There'd be no resistance. People like me would be non-existent. I would not be a problem, and I would not have been a failure in the program, so to speak. I mean, I wasn't like a winner in one sense of the word. I'm a reject. They tossed me out of the program.
All right. You have a question for me?
Yes. Your book, The Coming Global Superstorm, and the subsequent movie made off of it. If you had Zachariah Sitchin on the show many times talking about the Anunnaki and Planet X possibly being Nibiru.
That's right.
Do you think possibly that the coming Earth changes could be caused by the nearing of Nibiru or Planet X if it is Nibiru, just as they call it the flood?
Yes. Okay. Well, listen, all of that is perhaps reasonable to deduce from what we've heard from various guests and sources. I don't necessarily think that, no. It could be, though. And everything she suggested could be, including in my mind, I must say, Daryl, I to some degree agree with her. Why not speculate that these are beings from the future? And then you've got a good motive for tampering with DNA because you're tampering with our DNA. But then your answer is, well, it would have already happened.
They could fix the problem. My story would be, I don't remember anything, and there wasn't even an event. I wouldn't even know that it happened. They could fix that. I simply wouldn't know.
It's funny, Daryl. There are certain events, I've touched on this in past years, like Nelson Mandela and others, that millions and millions of people thought that Nelson Mandela was killed, that he was dead. At least they had that planted in their head. And yet Nelson Mandela, of course, went on to lead his nation as president, and yet people somehow had this thought that he had died. And this wasn't a few people. This was massive numbers of people. And it's almost as though something massive changed, Daryl, as though some twist occurred and not one person or not 10 people who were abducted forgot, but everybody virtually forgot, because something in time changed. So I don't know if I rule that out. I mean, it's no crazier or wilder than people from Alpha Centauri or angels or some derivation of angels or spirits or ghosts or those who have passed before us. I don't know. All of these things, it seems to me, nearly have to remain on the table until we know for sure.
We just have to collate what we have. In rare cases, very rare cases, we've had angelic beings show up in the event during an abduction. When that happens, the alien, whoever they are, take off in all directions, which makes me wonder who they really are.
Well, is that confusing enough or what?
It got real clear for me real quick if that story is true, and there are several of them. One of them is a famous Calvin Parker case.
All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Daryl Sims. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm out in the West. Daryl, I've been involved with this for 70 years. I've been given the responsibility of opening the door on every bit of the cover-up in all ways. My father lives on the planet Meropia. Like you said, you're part Native American. Most of the Native Americans have implants in their brain for the end times. There has been a white buffalo born in Kentucky and one in BC. Are you familiar with the Indian history that when the white buffalo comes, the white father will come back?
I am also familiar with it. I'm also familiar with the stories that have aired recently regarding the birth of more white buffalo.
Okay, this is true. My home planet is Meropia, and that is where our Messiah, we call him Yahshua, lives.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
And also I have 7 implants, and I am preparing a book that will open the door on every bit of it.
All right.
The Zetis and the Palladians have always worked together.
Maybe you can give us one little hint then, since you're preparing a book on it. I've asked Daryl the motivation of those who implant human beings. Now I'm asking you, what is the motivation of those who implant human beings?
There's 2 different segments. The Palladians and Zetis work together, and they have implanted about 10% of our population.
Motive, sir. Motive.
Motive is to prepare them because the implant we have can be turned on, and they can communicate when Yahshua comes with us to prepare to leave the planet. If you look in the Bible, it'll say that they will remove 144,000.
All right. So those who will be sucked up will be notified or found or saved by their implant. You heard that one before, Daryl?
Quite a few times. The problem I have with with the story of so many people being implanted, specifically Native Americans and so on, you got to realize 45% of the people I'm looking at are Native American and Irish, or a combination there. And these people,
you did say that.
I look at these X-rays and MRIs and everything, and we're not finding the volume that these people are speaking about. It just isn't there. The evidence for that statement is just not there medically.
Wildcard line, you're on the air with Daryl Sims. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Okay, sir. Where are you?
Conrad, Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I was wondering, I'm a Christian and I believe in Jesus and he's going to return and put everything in order. I'm kind of hearing a little bit about, the spirit side of this. My belief is that this is some kind of demonic entity of Satan's to help in the deception for the end times. Do you believe that could be a possibility?
Okay. Well, you're kind of like our last caller in a way.
Well, I first of all, I'm a Christian, and I don't see the entities as demonic, and even from a biblical perspective, it doesn't make sense. A demon, by definition, is a disembodied spirit. Mm-hmm. So these entities are physical. They actually do appear physical. They do leave traces on people. They do physically touch them. They do physically carry them and move them. Do I think they're evil? Yes, I do. I think what they do is evil. I think their intent is evil. I think, and I need to say that about the hierarchy. The entities themselves, I don't think, have much of a sense of care one way or the other what they do. They're just doing their job.
All right. I want to be sure I get this in, Daryl. You've got a website that I'd be more than happy to promote for you, www.alienhunter.org, correct?
That is correct.
How do you make a living, if not then from this?
Well, certainly we have a few things on the site. There are videos and tapes and things, and if anybody has any interest in those, they can email me, and I'll make sure that you get them a lot faster than you can get them on the net. So we do have a few things there. But how I make a living is I'm a real estate investor and a private investigator, and that's how I make my living.
All right. That's a good answer. So you probably spent more on this than anything else, huh? Probably more of your own money?
Yes. It's been a lot of my own money.
All right. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Daryl Sims. Hi.
Hi, this is Clifton. I'm calling from Columbia, Missouri.
Yes, sir.
Believe it or not, I'm Irish and Cherokee, and believe I've been contacted by the aliens myself. It's very possible, however, that I have some proof I'm holding in my hand. I've got a stone. It's formed into a Native American hide scraper, and it appears to have a computer chip embedded into it. It's about a 1/16 of an inch thick, 3 inches long, maybe an inch tall. And on one side, it kind of looks like it could be a fossil, but it looks like a computer chip as well. And on the back side, there's little metallic or metal leads like you would find on the bottom side of a computer chip.
Well, all of that is pretty intriguing. Have you had it looked at?
No, I've been afraid to actually let anybody have it but me because I don't want to lose it.
Well,
I do, however, trust Art quite well. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I've been listening since the early 90s.
I appreciate that, but please do not send it to me.
And I agree. I'm hesitant to release it.
It's just this shipping thing, you know. I mean, if you're ever out here, that's a different story. But the years have taught me, don't ship it. Especially giving notice on public radio. Bad idea.
You don't want to send it through the U.S. mail.
Right.
Do not do that.
Right. So I'm glad you trust me, sir. And maybe if you're ever there or I'm with you or close by, I would be glad to make arrangements. But otherwise, don't ship. Any suggestions or ideas, Darryl?
I sure do. One of the predictions I made to the 250 surgeons, a fourth prediction I made was that, and eventually we will find objects inside people that have technology.
Right.
This will be discernible, clear, and it's obvious that it will be, in my opinion, human. And I suspect that if you can prove that the object came from someone, in other words, there's a medical history of that, and that story is true, or if you'd just like for us to look at it, I'd like for you to take some photographs of it, pictures of it, send me the JPEGs, and let our engineers look at it.
All right. Well, I'm certainly impressed. www.alienhunter.org if you wish to know more. It has been a pleasure having you on this morning, Darryl. What you say is incredible. People will make various judgments about it, but it's been a pleasure having you on. It really has.
Art, it's always a pleasure with
All
you.
Right.
I'm so glad you're doing this work.
And we'll look forward to the next time. Take care, my friend.
Thank you.
Good night. You are, and it's great to be here, sort of guiding you through the weekend. Coming up in a moment is Dr. Roger Leir. Now, I've known Dr. Leir for years. He wrote a book, this was some time ago now, called The Alien and the Scalpel. And that's because that's what he does. He is said to be one of the world's most important leaders in physical evidence research involving the field of ufology. Now, if ufology can use anything, it certainly is physical evidence. He and his surgical team have performed 9 surgeries now on alleged alien abductees. This has resulted in the removal of 10 separate and distinct objects suspected of being alien implants. These objects have been scientifically investigated, and some of the most prestigious laboratories in the world have found all of it rather baffling. In fact, some comparisons have been made to meteorite samples. Now, that's very interesting because if you would imagine anything taken from the body of a human being to have an alien origin, that it would come back and look like things that we find from meteorites would make all the sense in the world. And the odds of it coming back that way would be almost impossible, wouldn't they? You take it out of a human being, and the origin is, well, like that of a meteorite. What are the odds? Dr. Leir anticipates performing more surgeries in the future and will investigate the physiological and biological aspects of the abduction phenomenon. He's also formed a nonprofit organization for that specific purpose called ANS Research, Inc. Now, there's a little typo there, so I hope that's correct. He really is quite a guy, the only one doing, as far as I know, what he does. In a moment, Dr. Leir. Dr. Roger Leir, welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you again, Art, all the way from the Philippines.
Yes, indeed. It's let's see. When did we do our last program? It's been a while, hasn't it?
Oh, gosh, it has. Yes, I've done, I think, a couple with George in your absence. But you were so kind to me to make the wonderful statement that you did about the Brazil case when I wrote the book, UFO Crash in Brazil.
Yes.
Published on the back of the book. A lot of good comments on that.
Oh, well, good. Through all this, are you still actively practicing medicine?
Unfortunately, yes. I have a daughter that's 15, so we have to continue to crank in the bucks so I can pay for her times now and in the future.
Well, I see. Okay, so you spend, is it like a 5-day-a-week deal for you or more?
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, off on Wednesday and weekends, but the mere fact of being off doesn't really mean much because between the research, implant surgeries, other investigations in the UFO field, and occasional time spent trying to restore an old 1948 Dodge, I keep pretty busy.
That's a lot on anybody's platter, and so it's a wonder that you find any time at all to do research. In fact, I'd kind of be interested. Remind me, if we never talked about this, what in the world got you started in ufology? After all, you're a podiatrist, right?
That's correct.
So it's a long way from the foot to, the object in the sky or the implant in the ear.
A long way to Tipperary, exactly. Most of my things in my life have been sort of one synchronicity upon the other. Years ago when I was quite young, maybe 11 or 12, I have a distinct recollection of my father bringing the San Francisco Examiner into the kitchen and reading the headline to my mother that said, U.S. Army Air Force captures flying saucer. And then he went on to a long dissertation about how, I told you, we can't be the only intelligent living beings in this vast universe. And I stood there listening to it. Now, how do I remember it was the San Francisco Examiner? Well, quite simple, because it was the only paper that he ever took, and I loved the comics. So that's how.
Boy, that was some headline. Say it again. U.S. Army?
U.S. Army Air Force captures flying saucer.
And that stood for how long until it became sort of a little piece of aluminum?
Well, it was only about a day. And
still, that must have been some one day. I mean, for one day, the major papers across the United States virtually said that we had a spaceship.
Right. Not only in the United States, but around the world.
But around the world. So I wonder what that day was like when people genuinely, for at least one day, thought we had captured an alien craft.
Well, you can just imagine. It wasn't, it wasn't a little back page article.
No. It was front page stuff. So what was it like? Can you recall it all?
Well, there was a lot of silence. I mean, I remember the adults talking about it. It was, a major thing in lives at that time. 1947 was kind of a strange time because we had come out of the war.
Right.
The war machine was cranking down. You still couldn't get tires. There was still ration stickers on the windshield. You had to go to a special place even to get the kind of meat that you wanted to. So, the society wasn't, anywhere near like it was now. So people were, I believe, in a state of shock. But my father was a businessman. He was a very simple person. And he had a very simple way of thinking. In other words, if you were a plumber, then everything that there was to know about plumbing, you better know. So when the next, headline came in that it wasn't a saucer, but it was a balloon, he was just really bent out of shape. I mean, he said, "You mean to say," and I remember this too, he told my mother, "Do you mean to say that the U.S. Army Air Force can't tell the difference between a saucer and a balloon?"
Same thing they say today when we talk about that subject.
Exactly. But he put it in very, simple terms.
Sure. But for one day, the world thought that we actually had that, and it sure would be fun to go back and, I don't know, get some kind of take on what people were talking about and what they thought, and whether they were thinking, gee, is this the beginning of an invasion? Are we about to have another war? Or just exactly what people thought? It would be interesting to know. If that happened today, can you imagine if that occurred today?
Oh, gosh, I don't know what to say. If it happened today, I usually, when I give my presentations about the world, I get asked a lot, well, you think if this happened today, Dr. Lear, that people would go run and hide in the hills? And I usually say, well, if it happened in Los Angeles on rush hour, let's say a big giant 3 football-sized craft landed on the middle of the freeway in the rush hour, would there be a panic? And I say, well, yeah, there'd be a panic. People would be on their cell phones calling Caltrans to get it moved so they could get home.
That's probably exactly right. People in L.A. would just be bent out of shape at the traffic situation.
That would be the extent of the panic. I mean, when you drive down the street and you see bumper stickers of gray aliens on the back of the bumpers, and the kids are running around wearing T-shirts with the typical gray face on it, and the History Channel and the Sci-Fi Channel and Discovery Channel and all the rest of them are continuously broadcasting things about UFOs and UFO documentaries and all sub-subjects of the field day in and day out. And then you talk to the kids, like my daughter, who has really no particular interest in this subject, but because she looks at it like, hey, the grass is growing on the lawn. I mean, what's the big deal? Oh, well, of course, we can't be the only, living, intelligent creatures in this universe. So
perhaps the next generation, Doctor, really would take it well. I mean, just hardly even blinking.
Oh, yes, I'm sure they will. It's a long cry from Orson Welles.
Well, you've chosen to enter a particularly controversial aspect of ufology, and that is there are people who believe that they have been abducted and that they have been implanted with some sort of device. Actually, you could tell me more about it than I could certainly sit here and make statements. What do most people who believe they have been abducted think that their implant is doing? Is it some sort of monitoring device or what?
Well, if they have any thoughts as to why it's there at all, most of them think it's it's some kind of monitoring device or controlling device, but that's probably not what it is at all. Human logic may not be exactly the same as logic from let's say intelligences from elsewhere that may be thousands or millions of years older than we are. So we can only look at things in terms of human logic. And I've had the occasion to be in 42 countries in the last 7 years. Excuse me. And it's not much different. You get a translator and you listen to what they have to say, and in Egypt or Poland or South America or wherever, the stories are about the same. It's certainly not every individual abductee who has even claim or any knowledge that they might have an implant, but the stories of the abduction situation are relatively the same. I mean,
really, is there almost a generic abduction story? It is interesting that you've been in all those different countries, and they're very similar. If you were to tell a generic story made up from all you've heard, what would the abduction be like?
Someone is taken without their permission. Sometimes there's memory, sometimes there's little memory, sometimes there's no memory. And they're taken someplace where they don't know where they are, and the ones with the conscious memories have experiences of, I guess you best put it, as medical experimentation. In the most cases, having something to do with ovum or sperm. And it goes on from there to all the subjects of seeing what they believe are hybrid offspring and descriptions of beings. Sort of universally, it's the gray, but not in every case. Some have memories of. I'm talking about conscious memory, not through regressive hypnosis. But some see people that look like us. Taller, blonde, blue eyes, good-looking. Other people see reptoid beings. Other people see insectoid beings, and then there's really a myriad of others. Looking at things, for example, in the Middle East, where little old ladies on kibbutzes were describing craft coming down with, 8-9 foot tall beings coming out of it and gathering potatoes out of a field. Similar things seen in what was previously the Soviet Union. You don't see that in South America.
Doctor, is there any big difference between what people are able, some of the best people who have good conscious memories of what happened to them, versus those who, for example, went through hypnotic progression? Is there a big difference in what they remember?
Well, hypnotic regression done in the hands of a qualified, experienced hypnotherapist, and there's not many of them around anymore. Certainly John Mack had his share, and we have Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, and fortunately in Southern California we have Yvonne Smith, and then in the other countries there's a few others. But there's not that many people who have the qualifications that these people have. But the hypnotic regression, I believe, only polishes details of the memory. Now, I think if everything is done right and according to what is supposed to happen, you're not supposed to remember anything. You just go through life and you're as happy as a clam. But unfortunately, I think there's been changes in the last maybe 20 or 30 years. People have they develop phobias, and kids are afraid of clowns, and kids will go to a dentist where they're normally not afraid to be examined by a doctor, where they sit in a dental chair, and the minute the nurse brings the light over their face, they freak out. Well, some of these kids have had abduction experiences. So I think regressive hypnosis only polishes what's there somewhere in the conscious memory. Now, I do have someone that I met within the last year who is a very well-known person and very influential, has had an experience, and he has almost total recall of what went on, and he said that he begged them not to erase his memory because he had no fear. And he said he had no fear of them, and he didn't know, why they were doing what they were doing. And he claims that and these were the Greys, that they told him that he was unique, and that they did do experimentations and had a great knowledge about the human anatomy and physiology, and that they weren't going to do anything to him because he was a very unique soul. And the reason he gave them was one of the ones was he absolutely had no fear of them whatsoever. And then there was a few other things. For example, he said, you're one of the few humans that we've ever picked up that was trying to tell us a joke, which we don't understand.
That's absolutely amazing. Last week I had a guest on the show, Dr. Lear, who said that people who are normally abducted are given these screen memories. In other words, everything's blocked out, and they're given this sort of where warm, fuzzy people. You had a wonderful experience, this screen memory that has to be penetrated to get to the real story. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think in some cases that's true. If they feel you're probably a person that might have a memory and then can't get along with it. I hate to say this, especially on the air with a worldwide audience, but I have severe doubts that there's such a thing as a military abduction going on. I've looked into these cases, and what I found is that when someone reports military abductions, there's two things that stand out. Number one, they live very, very close to a military installation, or number two, the whole family is just filled with people that are in the military. Now, these entities seem to be able to tap into your consciousness, and they know what's believable to you and what's not. So if you believe that you have 30 relatives in your family that are military officers, I think what's acceptable to that particular person is giving them a nice memory that they're underground in some base with generals running around. On the other hand, kids, sometimes they see clowns and owls and animals and things. So, and I think in some cases that's, probably a good scenario, but certainly not in every case. And certainly people like this friend of mine now, who's become quite a good friend, with a conscious memory that he has. I mean, it's right down to the nitty gritty. And like I was saying, he was telling him a joke, and he says, "Well, if you don't understand what I'm telling you, then how could you tell I'm telling you a joke?" And he said they told him because you were laughing.
Is this a name we would know?
No. It's possible I could get him to come on the air if he didn't use his real name, but it wasn't too long ago. He had another event that occurred driving through Death Valley, California, and this one he was with his driver, and they...
All right, hold that story. We're at the bottom of the hour, so hold tight, Dr. Lear, and we'll come right back to... Death Valley, that's near home. From Manila in the Philippines, I'm Art Bell. It is indeed, my guest is Dr. Roger Lear. He is a podiatrist. Now, that's a doctor who basically takes care of your feet. That's what he does for a living. But somewhere along the way, he became interested in ufology. And then he became interested in helping people out who thought they had things implanted in them, various places. Then he became interested in surgery to remove these and having them analyzed. In other words, hard proof. And a lot, apparently, of what's been analyzed, or at least some of what's been analyzed, has come back showing that it has properties similar to that of a meteorite, which would mean things not normally found here on Earth. They can do an analysis of material. And if it is not from Earth, and it's found inside a human being, at the very least, that has to make you go, So back to Dr. Lear, a story about the Death Valley area in a moment. Death Valley is very, very close to my my home's in the desert, and so back now to Dr. Lear. Dr. Lear, you were about to say or tell us about a case, a friend of yours in the Death Valley area. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. He had been traveling through the Death Valley area since he was 16 years of age. He's now 83, and he has a driver. They take a shortcut from Death Valley to go to Tonopah by going through Beatty. Mm-hmm. Do you know where that cutoff is?
Oh, I absolutely do, yes.
Okay, well, they've gone that route, he told me, hundreds and hundreds of times, and they could have done it backwards, upside down and asleep. Well, this one particular night, they were driving along and looking, for the cutoff, chatting and so on, and they didn't see it. So they kept on going. Finally, they realized, we passed this. But he said to his driver, you haven't seen, Death Valley, Scotty's Castle, and up in that direction, and so on. And I guess, we could go that way. But let's turn around and go back. So they did. Well, they turned around and went back, and they went back and forth about a half a dozen times until they were convinced that maybe the state closed that road for some reason. And he said, well, Dennis, let's just go out the other way, and we can, come down from the north and go. We'll skip going to Beatty, and we'll just come down into Tonopah. So they had already made up their mind that's what they were going to do, and they're driving along, and in the near distance, they saw an aura of lights. And he said to Dennis, he said, "What? My gosh, what are those lights? There's not supposed to be any lights out here." And he said, in a few minutes, they came to a sign that said Beatty.
Mm-hmm.
Both, and I've interviewed them both. They both tell exactly the same story. But as I said, he had a history of this happening, and I introduced him to Bud. Bud will be in California in December for the Norfolk Conference in San Diego, which should be a good one, I should mention. David Jacobs will be there, and Bud Hopkins, and myself, and a few other people. And one of the major topics, of course, is alien abduction. And it'll be in San Diego. I think it's the 2nd and 3rd of December. So I think we're going to get these two together, and he's willing to undergo a hypnotic session and learn more. And Bud talked to him on the phone, and evidently he's had things been going on since childhood. But here's a case of a conscious memory, nothing fuzzy, just tells it as he remembers it.
Sure. Listen, the website ballyhoos the fact that you had a recent visit to Area 51 during war game exercises. Now, that's incredible. Did you really get to Area 51?
Ooh, that's not warm and fuzzy. I had been to Area 51 numerous times before. Little alien mailbox. Road.
Oh, that's the area. Well, yeah, the mailbox, anybody can do that. That's on the highway. But when you say Area 51, I thought, boy, this guy has somehow managed to actually get a tour of and actually gone into Area 51 or what?
No. If I'd have been in Area 51, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's what I thought.
They would have erased me, not my memory.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I heard about them having their war games, which they call Red Flag Days.
That's right.
And I thought to myself, if there is something to see, it'll be a good time to fly it. So, they just can't fly it over the Nellis Range or Papoose Lake. They got to fly it somewhere. So maybe we'll see something unusual. And besides, kind of nice to get away. And as you know, the desert is so clear, and you can see the sky at night, and it's just marvelous. So anyway, we were well outfitted. But when I tell you the story, you'll see how absurd things can be. So we stayed at the little alien.
This was when, please?
This was about 3-4 weeks ago.
Okay, recently.
Yeah, recently. And there was 4 of us, and we drove out there and made a reservation. And we got there late on a Wednesday, and we knew that the temperatures get pretty cold at night, so we brought a lot of gear and gloves and thermoses so we could put hot chocolate and withstand the cold. And we staked out our little road off the extraterrestrial highway, sort of in the boonies there. And as you know, there's not much traffic there to begin with.
Right.
Interestingly enough, there were 3 Belgian pilots that were staying there also.
Really?
And they were going to fly the following week. And when they were not flying, they weren't on the base, so they didn't require them to stay there. But they were in constant communication with the satellite phones that they had. So we had some interesting conversations with them. Also spoke very good English. But we went out the first night, as I said, with all the gear, and we decided where we were going to go. So we went off on this dirt road, and we got our chairs, and we watched the war games going on at night, which was quite interesting because the jets, the F-16s, fly in formation, and they do various aerial maneuvers, and you can see them strobing, and the afterburners are on constantly. I mean, they're just zipping all over the sky, and they're dropping flares, and all this stuff is going on. But we didn't see anything other than that. The next day, you can't really see much during the day, but evidently they drop bombs. And when you feel one of these things go off, it's like something I never felt before. I was in the Army, but I never felt anything like this. It was a double shock wave, a lot like what you experience when you hear the shuttle come in.
Right.
But it reverberates in the ground. I mean, it just shakes you to pieces. So I don't know, what kind of a bomb they're dropping. But that was kind of interesting. And as I said, you can when the air temperature at altitude is cold enough, and I don't know whether you knew this or not, but when I quit flying, I had about 2,700 hours of air time, and they have to be at a certain altitude to get a contrail because the air is cold.
That's right.
So you were able to see some of that, but you didn't see a great deal of anything. The following night, we said, okay, we're going to get out there before dark, and we'll, get to where we were going and so on. And we got, for whatever the reason, kind of a late start. We were chatting and so on. So it was already dark, and we were driving down this lonely road. And here's where it goes bananas. Around my neck is my binoculars, a real nice set of binoculars. And my lap is a Sony video cam with night shot equipment.
I was going to ask if you took any night vision stuff.
Yeah, well, I had the camera, and there's there, ready to go, sitting on my lap, driving along, and I was sitting in the back, and two other people, one driving in the front, and the fellow that's driving, as we're cruising down this dirt road, says, "Oh, look, there's a light on that hill." And I said, "Oh, where?" So we look, and yeah, there's a light on a hill, which wasn't there before. And then we slowed down a little bit, and there was 2 lights. And then there was 3 lights. And then 4 lights. And then 5. And then 6. And then pretty soon, the lights you could see were going around in a circle counterclockwise.
Wow.
So I said, wow. And I pick up the video camera, and by the time it's so dark that when you turn on the viewfinder, it about blinds you. And by the time I got the viewfinder, to look at the light, it was already going back down where it came. Now, if we had a lick of sense, which we didn't, not at all, official UFO, investigators.
Yeah.
Camera in my lap, binoculars. We should have just stopped, turned off the lights,
of course,
and taken some pictures. But
Look,
no, we had to get
I don't
closer.
fault you.
Had to get better.
Nah, I don't fault you for 1 second. Almost nobody who sees these incredible things has a camera handy and is able to get it focused and ready and take the pictures. It just doesn't happen. But you really saw that. You saw as many as, 7 lights?
There was 6 or 7 lights, and
rotating?
They were going around counterclockwise.
Wow, that's a wow.
Yeah, and if we had stopped and shut off the lights, I think they saw us, and therefore, who expects to see a car out, in the desert on a dirt road, even in that area, and not maybe even weird ufologists.
Were you close enough to draw the attention of guards?
No, But I'm sure they knew we were there because
I'm sure they did.
This was no extraterrestrial craft. This was something that's ours because they saw us and we weren't supposed to see it. And they went back down.
Yeah, but what do we have that we know about that rotates in the manner you described? Nothing.
Well, we know absolutely nothing. But my God, they don't even tell us that the aurora exists, and that was on the pages 15 years ago of of the magazines with the propulsion system.
That's right.
So they're not going to tell us we got that kind of equipment. But wait,
I hope
tell
you guys
the rest of the story.
Okay, go ahead.
The rest of the story. The following night, we were out and we were getting ready to leave. We were still at the little Alien, and boy, the activity was just spectacular. They were dropping flares and targets, and the F-16s were just all over the place. And so we stopped as we were, heading out to the car. Virtually stopped, and we were looking at things through the binoculars and so on. And we saw what we thought were three F-16s flying in formation, two ahead and one trailing, and then another one sort of off to the left. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys exclaimed, "Gee, that's weird." What's weird? What are you talking about? Well, that big bright star that was just ahead of those two F-16s, it just disappeared. So I said, "Oh, really?" So I trained my binoculars up there, and there was this whole patch where you could not see the stars, and it was in the shape of a triangle.
Oh.
And the one to the left that was trailing was an F-16. And what we thought were F-16s, which was the strobing, was on each edge of the triangle.
Oh, you saw exactly what I've seen. I got to see it a whole lot closer. But there's no question about it. We have, or they have, or somebody has a triangle that defies gravity. And if it doesn't defy gravity, then it's a lighter-than-air craft of some sort. But what I saw looked very metallic, very silent, completely silent. I mean, we have it. Either we have it, or they have it, or we back-engineered it, or something. But these triangles are as real as a heart attack.
No, absolutely. This thing was just blocking, and it was huge. I mean, they were at the same height, as far as the lights were concerned, as what the F-16s were flying. And that altitude, had to be above 30,000 feet. And this thing blocked out a chunk of the stars. You just couldn't see through it, But I didn't see the detail that.
But there were enough stars so that you could actually make out the outline of what was blocked.
Oh yeah, then we realized these are not three F-16s. This is a triangle, and it's moving along. Yeah, and with all the noise from the other guys with their afterburners on, there was no excess noise from this thing, so I would assume it's silent. But again, four of us saw it. We all looked through the binoculars and were absolutely flabbergasted. And as I said, there was these three Belgian pilots there, and the day that we were leaving, two of them were outside talking on their satellite phones, and I was inside with one of them. We were sort of saying goodbye. We got to know them pretty well. And I said, well, we didn't really waste anything coming here because we saw some interesting things. He said, what'd you see? So I told him, and he was kneeling down on the floor by the table where I was sitting, and he just smiled. He says, well, all the things you hear about Area 51? Yes. Well, he says, they're all true.
They're all true.
They're all true.
Well, coincidentally, Belgium is a place that has had, I don't know how many sightings, tons of them, of these triangular craft, as I'm sure you're aware.
Oh, yes, and he knew about them. Yes, indeed. So I said, I'm just wondering how many countries have this exchange program with Area 51 where they participate in these games. And he says, well, I really don't know. And I said, well, I bet you don't see the French Air Force over here. And he just busted out laughing. He says, you will never see the French Air Force here.
Yes, I'm sure not. Boy, isn't that fascinating? So he admitted, he virtually admitted it to you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without
They're
giving
all
anything
true.
away.
The stories you hear are all true. Oh, my God.
They're all true, he says.
God, I would so love to know about this. I really would. Well, so congratulations. You had the experience. I'm sure what you just told is going to cause a lot of people to go camp out by that mailbox. Listen, while we're at it, why don't you tell them, a lot of people want to know, if you want to try and observe for yourself, where exactly do you go?
Well, extraterrestrial highway, easy to find. Little alien, you can get on the extraterrestrial highway and you can go in either direction. There are dirt roads that head off towards the base. Don't go too far because you'll come to a gate. Don't go past the gate or you won't be around anymore. So if you want to take a chance and go down that road, you can see really good from there, or you can go in the opposite direction. Now, there's one more thing I got to tell you. The following day, during the day, we took off on that road because the day that we saw this saucer-shaped thing, we wanted to see, what kind of a weird hill is this anyways? What's behind it? Where could that thing have gone?
Right.
So we didn't have a four-wheel drive, but we took the car and we drove as far as we could down this road, and this I did video. And we came across the weirdest set of telephone poles that I've ever seen. They were all high-tension lines, and on the bottom set of wires were the look like telephone lines. But as we got closer to the edge of this mountain, about every third pole, one of these telephone or communications lines went down the pole and into the ground.
Boy, isn't that odd?
Yeah, really, really weird. So maybe, just maybe, the extent of the underground portion of that base comes, way out farther than the restricted area that you're not allowed into.
Dr. Lear, there are a lot of people who think that Area 51 has been abandoned when it comes to these secret projects that we're now talking about and moved up into Utah or to another location. Obviously, that's not entirely so.
No, I mean, that's not, it can't be because, they have more than one place where they have this secret stuff, but you're not going to spend that kind of money on that kind of a base. And
on top of that, they annexed a lot more land recently, and that can't be for nothing as well. Dr. Lear, hold tight. We're at the top of the hour. We'll be back shortly. Dr. Roger Lear, I'm Art Bell in Manila, the Philippines. Here I am indeed. Dr. Roger Lear is my guest, and over the years, he has progressed from a standard medical practice, a podiatrist, to an interest in ufology, and then progressed to removing implants, removing things allegedly implanted by aliens. There's no other word for it. He just recently took a trip to Area 51 that you just heard described and saw a large triangular craft. And that really, really piqued my interest because, of course, that was my sighting. God, what a story. What a story that was. Anyway, back to Dr. Lear in a moment. Once again, Dr. Roger Lear. Dr. Lear, over the years, you have removed, I guess, up to 9 objects from human beings that I guess in every instance, was it just a matter of, hey, I've got something in me, or you found something in an X-ray and decided that it should be removed, or how do these things develop?
Well, before I answer your question directly, which I always like to do, time has passed. We have now completed the 12th surgery. The last one was done on September the 23rd.
Okay.
So we've shot ahead. Now the 12 surgeries have produced 11 objects. Now, to the question, is there, how does one know, I guess is what you're asking, if they got something, or does it hurt? Yes, sometimes it hurts. Now, the individuals that we consent to do procedures on have to have some kind of a physical or at least psychological complaint that something is there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to ethically remove anything from anybody. We just can't go on a fishing expedition.
That's right. Which is it usually, by the way? Is it physical or psychological that brings them to you?
Sometimes 50-50 and sometimes both.
Really?
Sometimes there's a conscious memory of something being put in by some entity, some intelligence from elsewhere, which is the term that I've been using lately. I don't know.
And are they normally correct about where? In other words, if somebody comes to you and says, look, I think I've got an object that's been, I was abducted, or I think I was abducted, and there's an object in my arm or my ear, let's say. I don't know. Are they normally correct about where?
Well, and again, in order to do this on a scientific basis, you just have to establish a certain set of criteria and protocols. We don't do anything unless they can prove to me satisfactorily that they have an object, which means that they not only have to suspect where it is, but they have to show me where it is on an X-ray, a CAT scan, or an MRI. Otherwise, it's not my bailiwick.
So it has to happen. In other words, you've got to see the MRI before they even come to you.
Exactly. I don't have anybody come in.
Okay.
Yeah. When they come up with some form of radiological physical evidence, then we can take it from there. But that's only the beginning. There's a long procedure that they have to do. I run about 500 emails behind a month. I get
people who think they have something.
People you don't know how many people think they have something, and
oh yes, I do.
It's the government put it in. It's my neighbor. It's the army. It's foreign relations, secret societies.
I know. I know.
On and on and on, and there's suspicions of this, and there's I saw a crash of a UFO in Wyoming that nobody knows about, and it's a secret, and I'm going to keep it a secret. And, maybe if you give me $50 million, I'll tell you where it is.
Yeah, I've had a few of those too. Of all the people you would talk to say, you just don't know. Yes, I do know, because I get the emails, Doctor, so I do know.
Well, you've been doing this long enough, Art, to probably get a good sampling of what mankind is like, especially those that are familiar with this subject. Fortunately, I've gotten some help, both psychologically and monetarily, from some really nice people who they've helped us all, particularly one who has not taken credit for as much as he has done in relation
Yes,
to
I
this.
think we both know who we're talking about, sure.
Yeah. A very, very successful person who is bound and determined to unlock some of the secrets, and now he has another way of doing it, and has been very successful in that endeavor.
Okay, of the now 12 surgeries that you've done with 11 objects removed, are there any of these objects that you can, let's see, what's the right way to phrase this, without qualification, say, are not from Earth?
Yes. Unqualified yes is the answer to that question. We have certain physical enigmas that don't allow any other theory other than the fact that they're not from here. And it's not just the fact that biologically there's no portal of entry to where any of these objects go in, or that when you remove the tissue that's around them, there's no inflammatory reaction or rejection reaction. Now, how in the heck are you going to get a piece of something in you and not have the body react? it doesn't happen. So that's just the biological stuff. But then when we look at the metal stuff, we have noted labs like New Mexico Tech and Los Alamos and SEAL Labs and York Laboratories and Toronto University and on and on and on. And I don't mind mentioning those that I can't.
No, that's fine. If they've done the work for you, then fine.
They've done it. I've got the reports. I published it. If you don't believe it, that's fine. Don't shoot.
No, I do believe it.
No, I
so
mean the folks out there.
Well, no, I think most of them that are in this audience are smart enough to believe it if we say it is so. That these objects have come back with what differences that define them as not earthly?
Good question, and I'm going to give you a couple, a little examples. Then we'll get to the latest one.
Okay.
I couldn't mention this before because we had an in this laboratory with a marvelous scientist that was a dear friend of Whitley Strieber. His name was Bill Mallow, and now he's passed. And with his passing, the door has been closed. So that laboratory is Southwest Labs in San Antonio, Texas. And it is, and it was, and now definitely is a total black budget laboratory. We were able to get in there under the auspices of Bill Mallow and get some tests done. Now, one of the things we found in the object that we had there, as well as the other ones, is that they are highly magnetic. And usually magnetic objects contain what? Iron.
Well, some sort of iron, yeah.
Right. So you figure, well, okay, not much unusual about that. But then when we do a test called X-ray diffraction, we find that the iron is amorphous. That means it has no crystalline form. Now, that must be some sort of enigma, because when you have all these black budget scientists that are crowded into a little room looking at this stuff, wondering how amorphous metals can become magnetic, and the director of the laboratory is standing out in the hall with his hands on his hip and the nastiest look on his face that he could ever give you. You better believe that if secret science doesn't know how to do it, we don't know how to do it. Period.
Wow.
That's only one little example.
And this was an object you had removed?
Yes, this was one of the surgical objects that we removed. Now, if we shoot ahead to the one we just did, I don't have much back on that yet because it takes a while, and of course it takes money. And
of course, this would be the 12th surgery.
Yeah, 12th surgery. Lady with a full history of involving in the abduction phenomena, her and her family. I have 2 audio cassette tapes that she gave me that was dictated by her father, telling about his experiences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. None of these people undergo regressive hypnosis. We don't allow it. Just for the fact we don't need any more criticism than we get for some little country podiatrist doing weird surgeries with a surgical team. Now, I want to make it clear, I only operate on the foot. So
that's right.
I don't want to be accused of doing something I'm not supposed to do. We do have a surgical team. We have general surgeons, and if something somewhere else, they do it. But this case was in the foot, and the first X-rays I saw were 2 years ago, and it was in the 3rd toe. And it looked the same as 4 of the other objects that I removed. In fact, it was exactly the same length. It was a little rod, a little metallic rod, about 6 millimeters in length and about the thickness of a pencil lead.
And you had 3 previous that were exactly the same?
No, 4. This now would be the 5th. So before we do the surgery, we want to make sure the thing is there and it's where it was, when I first see it. So I take an X-ray right before I do the surgery, and unfortunately, this thing had worked its way up into a joint and had fractured into 3 pieces. So I said, "Oh boy, when it's in 3 pieces, it's going to be harder to get out when it's just 1." But we had, as I said, we got enough funds to be able to get the equipment so that makes these things feasible to do. But I got it out, and it was all in one sack. It was in one subcutaneous, strange sack, which it's still in. Now, before we took the thing out, every once in a while I get a new piece of equipment. So we used a Gauss meter, and you'll like this stuff. You'll know more about it, Art, than I do. It puts out an electromagnetic field of 4 milligauss.
Really?
Then we used a radio frequency detector, and I wish you'd have been there because, it has a small antenna. You could point this antenna in an isolated area, because without any other interference from radio sources, you point this antenna to the second toe, and you get no reading at all. I mean, the numbers just spin on by. You point it to the fourth toe, and it spins on by. You point it to the third toe, and it locks on 30.0127.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Please start again.
30.012732 megahertz.
Wow. So just barely above 30 megahertz. My.
I don't. You, as I said, you know more about it than I do. What that means, I haven't a clue. But
did anybody take a radio receiver tuned to that frequency and try and see what it was?
No.
Oh, darn! That would have been the next obvious thing to do. If you're getting enough radiation from that thing on that frequency to register, then oh my God, you would certainly want to. Damn, Doctor, you're right. I should have been there. I've got many receivers that would cover that frequency. And to know what it was transmitting, what kind of signal it was transmitting, what kind of modulation, if any, there was on the carrier, if there was a carrier, or whether it was FM or AM or something we don't know. Oh, my God, I would love to have been there.
Well, I wrote down the numbers because I said, oh, my God. And I'm not going to remember this. The number is too long. So I wrote it down, and we got it on video, and got pictures of it.
Let's see if it means anything to anybody out there. That was 30.012732.
Right.
Very specific frequency.
You just locked on it, and then I shut it off and let it rotate again, and we'll go right back to the same frequency.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, this is why I have decided, if I stay alive long enough, I'm going to physically construct, here in California, an Institute for Physical Evidence Research. And amongst other things, we're going to have a lab where if we find findings like this, we're going to have an isolated room which won't allow penetration by anything. And I hope we'll have enough equipment and then experts like yourself who will be there. This is going to be a real place where we can study evidence not only from alien abduction phenomena, but other sources of UFO phenomena, landing traces, and etc. Nobody ever looks at the physiological aspects of abductees. Why do they all feel the way they do after an experience? They're all dehydrated. They gobble water. You look at some of the electrolyte balances; they're not normal. What's going on? But nobody bothers to look at it. I want a thing that is like NIDS was, except for just doing specific things, and then we're not going to wait to try and get papers out that are peer reviewed, because I want to put up an uplink, and we're going to broadcast it. We'll stick it right in the face of academic science, and it's going to be real hard for them to ignore. And I've got.
Well, this is a very serious piece of information you've just given me, and boy, what I wouldn't have given to been there with a receiver. Okay, so this was in 3 pieces, but within a sack, you said, of some sort.
In a whatever you want to call it, in a membrane or some kind of specialized tissue. Now it's still there. I just had the optical microscopy done. I just got the pictures. I sent them all to Tom, but I guess unfortunately they didn't get up on the website. Maybe you could get a hold of them and have them put them up later for people to look at. But very interesting looking thing. I did one other thing that you'd be very, very interested with, limited stuff, limited budget. I took a magnet, and I took this object with all. Now you got to remember, all three of these pieces are now separated. The only thing that's containing them is this subcutaneous sac, membranous sac, and I laid the object on the magnet just to see what would happen. And you know what happened?
What?
It stood up on one end. And you say, well, okay.
Well, obviously it was magnetic and polarized.
Yeah, same conclusion I came to. And then I had a plastic forcep, and I took it off, and then I turned it around, and I said, well, I wonder what would happen if I put the other end. And by God, it stood up on the other end. Now, in the first place, the pieces are not touching each other.
Yeah.
So I got this on video also. It stands up, and whichever way you want to put it, it'll stand up, and the top part will just fold over 90 degrees.
Oh, that's really weird.
Oh, it is weird. And as I said, I'm just so sorry that the pictures aren't up for the folks to see, but we'll try and put them up on my website at least.
How long ago was this surgery now?
23rd of September.
23rd of September. And this person had been complaining of...
she'd been complaining of discomfort in the toe. Well, you would too if you had a piece of metal stuck in your joint.
Uh-huh. With no memory of stepping on anything or any other causative factor other than the abduction experience?
No, just happened suddenly, and in fact, she's a nurse. She works for Kaiser, and she went in for some other reason. She injured her ankle, sprained her ankle or something, and like some of the other cases, they took x-rays and said, oh, you got metal in your toe. Oh, no, I don't. I never stepped on anything. There it is.
Boy, is that odd stuff. That's really odd, particularly having a frequency that it was transmitting on and just finding that again and again and again. Oh, to have gone further with that. You're the first one who's ever given me a specific, like a frequency, that an object was transmitting on. Now, after you removed this object from the toe, Doctor, I would take it that you looked for a continuing transmission from this item. Did it stop?
Oh, it did indeed. It doesn't do anything. You can't even, on a trimeter, you can get a magnetic reading, but
that's it.
You can't get an electromagnetic reading anymore.
Hold tight, Doctor. We're at a break point. We'll be right back. This is Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell. I'll tell you this. If I had been there, and I had a signal coming at 30.012732 megahertz, I don't think I could have let them take it out, not until I'd analyzed everything in sight about that signal. God, driving me absolutely crazy to hear this and not to have been there and been part of that. And that's the way it goes, I guess. But can you imagine radiation coming from an object in somebody's toe on that frequency and not be able to look further into it than that? Dr. Roger Lear is my guest, and he'll be right back. As many of you know, I have a bad back, and I've had my share of MRIs. And one time when I went and got an MRI, the technician was really nice, and we were talking about the strength of the electromagnetic force created by the MRI machine. And he opened up the front of the machine and said, "Well, okay, you want to see?" And he opened up the front and took a metal bar, turned the machine on, held the metal bar close so it wouldn't clam into it, and turned the machine on, and then said, "Go ahead, try try to remove it. I put my hand around that metal bar and I pulled as hard as I could, and there was no way. So the electromagnetic field created by an MRI machine is astoundingly strong, making this question very relevant. Chris H. in Lakeland, Florida, asked, Doctor, has anybody ever had an implant ripped out by an MRI?
Logical question.
Yes,
not
yes.
to my knowledge. We've had MRIs done on them, and they seem totally resistant to that very powerful force that's generated by the MRI magnets.
Well, that's odd.
Well, having it stand up on a magnet where you think you would have
is odd.
A polar attraction,
Yes.
and then turn it around the other way is rather odd also.
It sure is, but they show up on MRIs.
Yeah, they'll show up, right? And a lot of people are fooled because they see things on MRIs which they expect to see in an X-ray, and they're not. For example, on an MRI, you can look at a good cross-section of a blood vessel, and will it appear as a nice bright spot? Well, they'll think that's something that shouldn't be there, but that's all it is the nice cross-section of the blood vessel with the blood flowing through it.
Sure. So this thing is off now being tested, is that correct? Or about to be?
Well, we had the optical microscopy done. That's what we just got back. Now it's going for the AFM, which is atomic force microscopy, which is the most sensitive instrument for looking at the surface. So we will look at the surface of not only the membrane that contains it, but also the metal within.
Okay, but let's talk for a second about the membrane that surrounds it. Now, is this something that normally would be, I don't know, generated by the body in some sort of immune response to the object, or is this in itself anomalous?
This in itself is anomalous because, well, let's just take some practical examples. In World War II, a lot of pilots were shot up and got pieces of shrapnel and flak and windscreen stuff stuck in their bodies. And when they had too much or they were in bad places, the doctors didn't go take them out. They just left them there. Now, if you took any one of these at a later date and removed it, you'd say, okay, well, the patient, didn't have a lot of problem, but stayed in there. See, there's no problem. But when you look at it through the microscope, then you see evidence of what's called a chronic inflammatory reaction. Now, a chronic inflammatory reaction will build a wall, and it'll build a wall of fibrous tissue which surrounds the object, and that medically is what we call a fibrous inclusion cyst. And so that's what you find with most things. Either the body is going to reject it, like you got a sliver or piece of glass or something like that, and you scream in pain, don't want to touch it, and maybe you get lucky and you soak it in some warm salt water and it'll work its way out. See, but it's not the salt water that's sucking it out. It's the body with the immune system and the cells that are going in there, the little phagocytes that are acting on it, and it gets rid of it. But when you look at these things, you see nothing. This is not fibrous tissue. This is a very smooth, I would describe it as a membrane. Now, in the past, we've had analysis of this done, and it only contains three things. One is what's called a protein coagulum, which means protein derived from coagulated blood. And the next thing it has is striated keratin, and this is the stuff that makes up your skin, hair, fingernails, and so on. And then it has hemosiderin, which is very similar to hemoglobin. It's an iron binding ferrous iron pigment, which holds oxygen. Now, I've looked high, wide, and handsome through from Harvard to wherever, through all the medical school libraries at great cost to see if any of this tissue has been described by anybody else. I mean, we have a lot of written stuff on the body and pathology and physiology, but there is no such combination that's ever been removed.
What do we know? For example, let's work backwards a little bit. Can you relate any of the story that she told about the abduction?
It's much the same as, in the classic memory cases. As I said, these individuals don't undergo regressive hypnosis before having surgery. If she wants to have it done now, so next time we talk, I'll have a better answer as to what happened. But she, has the light in the room and sees figures and the usual kind of run-of-the-mill stuff.
Run-of-the-mill stuff.
Yeah,
run-of-the-mill stuff. I suppose from your perspective, it's run-of-the-mill, but, being in a spaceship with creatures around you and lights and all the rest of it is not exactly what I'd call run-of-the-mill.
What do you think about my idea of, really looking at physical evidence the way it should be?
Well, I think it's a superb idea. It takes money.
Yeah, well, I've got several ways of doing that. One is another crazy thing I'm doing, which I'm going to do a movie, a full-fledged entertainment film.
Oh?
It's called Earth's Original Sin.
Really? What a great, that's a great title.
Yeah, I've got, in fact, we did a teaser for the movie, and Coast to Coast own Ross Mitchell did the narrative for the space scene.
He'd be ideal for that.
Yes, he was. It's really good. We got a wonderful script, and it covers all the sub-subjects of the field of ufology, from implants, abductions, secret societies, the role of religion, government, cattle mutilations, etc. But it's done in a fictionalized form with a good story and an ending which will shake the spirits out of you.
Earth's Original Sin. What a great title.
And you can look at some clips from the teaser on my website if anybody out there is interested.
And if you make money from this, which, by the way, is not a norm for movies, depending on how you do them, it will go for research.
That's right. It's going to go to either pay for and build, or if we can get, there's a chance we can build this without the funds from the movie. But the movie, if it's successful, and I'm beginning to believe that if things are supposed to be, it's going to happen, and if they're not, they won't. But like you said, it's very difficult to make money from movies, especially if you go through the norm. So we want to produce this as a privately endowed film and create a situation in which we will get major distribution. So there's some new things that have happened in the last couple of years, and I've had to got quite an education in doing this. So I've got a wonderful partner in this who's got a lot of experience in the motion picture field. So everything looks like we're waiting to get the budget now, and to find two people to get along together without stealing from each other in the motion picture business is strange.
Tell me about it. I know.
But we found that the gal that wrote the script met with the script handler, and she's the one that's doing the budget. And we had the most wonderful, marvelous, productive meeting I've had on anything. Certainly a lot better than in medicine. But they just got along tremendously, and that's what I'm waiting for now is the budget.
All right. Another route to mainstream science, of course, is publishing in some sort of peer-reviewed journal. Have you done that yet?
No, we got real close. Colin Kelleher from NIDS was working on our project where we had a piece of material from a non-terrestrial being. We had tremendous amounts of money spent doing DNA research, and we were getting ready to publish in a small scientific journal. And almost there, 2 weeks away from that, Colin had already written the article. One of the scientists, one of the world's leading geneticists that was working on this, came out with a brand new PCR procedure and discovered this was not what we thought it was totally. And if we'd have published that, we would have been the Earth's laughing stock. So that's the closest as we got. But, I've tried we've had this criticism before. But, there are academic scientists out there who can't get things published in a peer-reviewed journal.
Oh, I know.
You remember that NASA is still in a big fight arguing about the meteorite with carbonaceous life in it from Mars. So
that's quite true.
That's why I want to get in a situation where I'm going to throw it in their faces. We'll just put it out there, and let them start arguing about it. There's nothing better in academic science than an argument between several scientific groups.
Well, that's absolutely right. What would you say? Is this now the most unusual object that you have ever removed?
It's most unusual from the facts that I just gave you. I haven't got the rest of the story yet because we don't know whether it's going to fall in line with some of the other things that we found. But I would say the most unusual one was, and it still raises the hair on the back of my neck, was the object that was in the lady's arm that moved when you put your finger on it, and then it began to follow your finger.
Oh, now I hadn't heard this one.
Oh, I've got this on video too, as I do everything else. And when I see it today, the hair still stands up on the back of my neck.
Well, tell me about it.
Lady in her early 50s, airline stewardess for a major airline, had an experience about 20 years before she saw me. Was sleeping one night with her intended about 3 o'clock in the morning. Again, the same old story. Pardon me for keep saying that. Room fills up with light. She wakes up, tries to wake up the boyfriend, shakes him violently, won't wake up. She's got to see what the light is. Is it a cop that's shining a spotlight in the window? Hovering helicopter, somebody with bright lights on. They shouldn't be doing that because they're disturbing her sleep. Gets out of bed, goes to the window. Next thing you know, it's morning. She wakes up. The boyfriend is gone. She's sick. Has all the feelings of the flu, muscle aches, pains, extremely dehydrated, wants water, goes into the bathroom, gulps about 3-4 glasses of water, doesn't know whether she's going to call in and cancel her flight that day, decides to go back to bed, goes back to bed, sleeps for another couple hours, get up, feels a little bit better, goes in, takes a shower, and as she's washing herself in the shower, she looks at her left arm, and there's a large marble-sized lump there. And she said to herself, oh, my God, I didn't have that when I went to bed. I wonder what it is. So she, if you woke up and you had a lump, what would you do? You would touch it. So she touched it, and it moved. It scared the crap out of her. She about fell in the shower, and she called a friend of hers, and the friend told her, don't worry about it. It's probably nothing but a cyst. And she never saw the boyfriend again and decided never to tell anybody because the experience was too weird. And then she finally got a hold of me, and I heard the story on the telephone because she didn't live that far away from my office. And I thought, oh, boy, here's a lady with a psychological problem. She doesn't need me. She needs somebody else. But anyway, I said, well, why don't you come to the office and let me take a look at it. Have you had any x-rays taken? And she said, no. This is one of the cases where I sort of broke my own rule for Lord knows why. So she came, and very nice lady, and we sat and chatted, and she told me about the experience. And I said, okay, let me look at your arm. So here was this marble-sized lump, and she was very sort of a frail individual with a very thin arm, and it made the lump look even larger than it was. And I thought to myself, well, this, I've seen a lot of cysts in 40 years, and this just looks like a cyst to me. And so I said, well, what's this business about it moving? And she says, well, go ahead and touch it. And I said, well, okay, sure. So I went to palpate it. That's what we call it.
Right.
And I touched it, and it moved about an inch away.
Wow.
But that didn't say good old me, because the way my mind has been trained, if something is occurrence physiologically, there's an answer. So I made up my mind, well, she probably got an infection, and sometimes bacteria make a tract subcutaneously, which we call a sinus tract. Mm-hmm. So obviously she had an infection, and she developed a cyst, and this thing just moves in the sinus tract. So therefore, if I put my finger where it started and then touch it again, it'll just move back to the same spot, and that'll be the answer to the whole thing. So I did that, and instead of going back to where it was, it went 90 degrees in the other direction. And now, believe me, I didn't get up, didn't give up. This is all logical. She's got two sinus tracts, right? Why not? Can happen.
I guess.
So you got, 10 fingers, so I put one finger in the first place, the second finger on the other place, and I touched it, and it went in another 90 degrees. And so what it would do, basically, it would go anywhere within about a circle of a diameter of about 2.5 inches.
Holy mackerel.
And then when I was playing with it, sort of, to see what it would do, it would then begin to follow my finger. And that's the hairiest part to me. I mean, even today when I look at the video, this thing's so following weird. My finger as I move it around her arm.
Yeah, I sure would like to see the video.
Oh, I can send you a DVD.
Listen, a couple of items, just for your reference. Rob in Alabama says, look, the Federal Communications Commission shows that frequency range as totally U.S. government. Mobius in Arden, North Carolina says 30.012 megahertz was used by Northrop's OV-2-5 satellite in the 6870 era. Says it was used for cosmic data and UV deep space collection. Speculation used by some modem spy satellites. So it's obviously government frequency range.
Oh, boy, you're leaving me absolutely speechless, and the hair standing up now.
Well, no, it's true. It's all true. A lot of people are collecting data on this, and they're all coming back and saying it's U.S. government territory. I'm sure that is correct.
Cosmic meaning deep space?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Suppose, Art, again, I don't know that much about electronics. Suppose this is a harmonic.
Well, it's of course entirely possible. It could be a harmonic.
Maybe it's even in an electromagnetic spectrum that we don't have any idea what it is.
Boy, any of that is possible.
But
that's
boy,
so
what you just told me, I mean, really knocks me off my pins.
All right, Dr. Lear, when we get back, we'll shortly begin taking phone calls, so those that know the numbers are welcome to begin to try. Dr. Roger Lear is my guest. He is a podiatrist who turned his attention some time ago to ufology and removing objects from people that ought not be there. I'm Art Bell. Breaking news from the Middle East. Saddam Hussein is guilty. Death by hanging is the sentence. And some are expecting all hell to break loose within minutes. So there you have it. Breaking news. Saddam Hussein, guilty, and will be put to death, apparently, by hanging. Laura in Hell's Canyon, Washington, sends that. We'll see about the all hell breaking loose. But there's the breaking news for you. My guest is Dr. Roger Lear. To be sure, some of these stories have been absolutely fascinating. Particularly the frequency. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Back in a moment. Once again, we've got breaking news. Saddam Hussein guilty of crimes against humanity. He will be hung by the neck until dead. 3 co-defendants sentenced to 15 years. The defense attorney in the trial apparently ejected for something or another. I don't have information on what that is just yet. A lot of people expecting big news out of Iraq and a lot of trouble as a result of this verdict. Okay, back to our guest, Dr. Roger Leir. Doctor, welcome back.
Good to be here again, Art.
I do want to ask you one general question, which actually was listed on the list of questions, and it's one I'm highly curious about, and that is whether you think, in your opinion, whether the truth about UFOs, whatever that is, will ever be released. Well, I guess maybe the first question ought to be, do you think that our government or any government knows the truth about UFOs, and if so, will it ever be released?
Answer to part one is yes and no. The word government needs qualification. I don't think that every elected representative that sits in Congress knows about what's going on. Maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. But I think the term government is painted with too broad a brush. Some people in this government, I'm sure, know. Some people in the government of the UK know. Some of them in Australia know. Certainly some of them in Belgium know. Brazil know. But is it all governments and all of the government? No. And will it ever be released? I've come to the conclusion that the timetable may not be in human hands at all. If you go back through history and you look at the history of this subject and the supposed meetings that have taken place and the Eisenhower meeting and so on, if you just accept 10% of that as the reality, there's a good indication that this is some kind of a joint effort between us and them. And, it depends on who wants it released. Maybe it'll never be released. Sorry.
Do you think what do you think the reaction would be if, in fact, it was released? If what we least expect actually occurred, and let's say our government, the U.S. government, were to suddenly the president comes on TV and lays it out for us. How would that go down?
Well, I think as far as the United States and the more progressive societies in this world would probably take it with a grain of salt. Okay, yeah, well, now we know there's going on close to 200 extra solar planets. The next step is, some of them look like they're inhabited. The next step, they are inhabited. Not only that, but they've been visiting. So what's the big deal? Whereas you go somewhere else in Africa or the Amazon in Brazil, and they'll say, it's probably the work of God, and they'll go out, in the jungle and start praying to it. So reaction worldwide would probably be a lot different.
All right. To the phones we go. Anybody with a question for Dr. Leir is certainly welcome. First-time caller line would be James in Arizona. You're on with Dr. Leir. Hi.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Tucson, Arizona, KNST 790. Me and 7 of my relatives all have a pain in the joint of our big toe. And I'm wondering if there might be some kind of correlation. Should I have that checked out?
Well, I certainly have it checked out. There's a lot of physiological reasons why you might have pain in the big toe. One of them that comes to mind is a gout, which is not only causes pain in the big toe joint, but it's also hereditary. So, it can be arthritis or half a dozen other different things. Have it checked out. Certainly wouldn't hurt to get an X-ray taken.
All right, and then just a general comment. When Diana Spencer married Windsor Charles, I became related to the Bushes and the Queen of England. I'm wondering if that's some giant correlation. And another thing, the Illuminati is real because my father just happens to be one of them. So
I'm just wondering if maybe I'm some kind of genetic experiment.
Well, obviously, we have no way of knowing that, sir. But as far as the Illuminati being real, Dr. Lear, you've looked into these societies a little bit, haven't you?
Oh, yes. I have some friends who have studied this for numbers of years. And I always remember that years ago, I had some nice copies of Gary Allen's books, the political science professor from Stanford University, where he wrote numerous books on the CFR. CFR, what in the world is the CFR? Committee on Foreign Relations. Well, what do they do? Well, my gosh, back in those days, written in those books was the names of people that were around, 10 years ago, written, 30 years ago. Like Henry Kissinger. Whoever heard of Henry Kissinger or William Clinton? These people were all in the books having to do with the CFR. And if the CFR is a reality, which it certainly is, we know where they meet and they know how many times a year they meet. And then Bill Clinton was photographed a few years back by the news folks coming out of a Bilderberger meeting in Canada. We know about the Illuminati. We know about Bush being a member of the Skull and Bones. Of course, these things are real.
But are they the, what's the right way to phrase this? Are they the dark, ominous, scary, evil things that people make them out to be, or are they something less?
Well, I don't think they're warm and fuzzy. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Back to abductions for a moment, and implants, for that matter. Have you come to any conclusions, Doctor, even personal conclusions, after all the interviews and the surgeries and all the rest, about what these abductions, what motivates them, what they're all about? What are your personal thoughts?
Yes, Art, I can, try and stay with, scientific
I know you do.
Paradigm, but, it still doesn't stop me from being a free thinker, and
that's right.
I guess I can be a free talker. I've been on Coast, many times, and I speak what is my opinion, and that's what people should take it as, only an opinion. Because if there's somebody that gets on this show or any other show or public forum and says, well, here it is, folks, I've got the answers.
Yeah, be wary of that.
Yeah, you better put your fingers in your ears and run.
No, qualified. I'm asking you for your personal opinion.
Yeah, this is my
You've been doing this so long now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, that something is going on which has to do with human genetics. And I agree with David Jacobs that looks like there's some kind of a hybrid program going on. Most cases of abduction involve something genetic, ova and sperm. Now, that may not be the only answer, and I've done a study on 17 functional growth characteristics in children over a 40-year period, and find out that these characteristics have been accelerated from 16 to 80%.
Wow.
Now, that's even at fast evolution, that's too fast. And if you look at all the possible reasons, and this is worldwide, this is not just, in Norway or the U.S., this is worldwide. And this is a fast kind of stuff. It's not food, it's not TV, and it's not environmental, and it's not mutation, because as we know, mutations are inconstant. You can get somebody with 6 fingers on one hand and 4 on the other, or one blue eye, or one green eye. But
Sure.
These are very specific things that are in books. These are statistical things that hold true. That the age that a baby raises his head, stands up. You look at kids today, and there's not a mother or grandmother or grandfather that will tell you, "Oh my gosh, this kid said something. I can't believe what they said." Have you ever heard that? Coming from parents or grandparents.
Again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
indeed.
It looked, maybe one of the reasons for abduction is that the human race is being genetically remanipulated, and I hope it's for the better. If
Okay,
it's not,
well, I wanted your opinion, and you sure gave it.
That's it.
Wildcard line, Ann in Tucson, you're on with Dr. Roger Lear.
Good evening, gentlemen. I was doing a healing session on a woman. She was face up on the table, and I had my hands several inches above her face, palms down, and as I went over her eyes, something popped out of her left eye, hit the palm of my hand, and the woman goes, "Oh, I've been having trouble with that eye." She was ready to set up an appointment with her eye doctor, and her family had been having abduction situations, a child waking up out in the woods. The family was having nosebleeds, ear bleeds, and when we searched the room, we could not find it. And the only explanation I could even come up with was reading sort of quantum physics for dummies, and antimatter meeting matter and it disappears. And just my 2 cents in that. Oh, and her eye did clear up, and I did find several other areas in her breasts that also had the same energetic pull. And my only 2 cents worth on why are some people abducted and others are not. Everybody says, well, by universal law and metaphysics, if you tell something to leave, it's supposed to leave. I found repeatedly in people that I worked with, the ones that were having abduction phenomena had trouble setting boundaries in other aspects of their lives, maybe abuse as a child, and it's sort of a chicken and the egg thing, which came first, the abduction phenomena, or that they had already had boundaries broken through child abuse or something like that. But this woman particularly had a lot of trouble setting boundaries and attracting the wrong people.
Well, Ann, I'm not a physicist, but if antimatter had hit your hand, I don't think you'd have a hand. I think antimatter destroys matter with quite an impressive bang, I'm told, if it actually occurred. So I don't know beyond that, but that's a pretty wild story. And boy, Doctor, you can get stories like that all day long.
Well, I wish I had the object that came out of the eye. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, apparently it jumped out of the eye and hit her hand, which was above that lady's head. Very, very odd stuff, to say the least. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Roger Lear. John in Long Island.
Hello,
Thank
Arthur.
you.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Okay, I just have 2 questions for the doctor. The space shuttle produces this sonic boom. Now, UFOs supposedly can move a hell of a lot faster than that because you use the gravitational pull of the planets. Now, how come you never heard of any UFOs actually producing the sonic boom? And the second question is, we have, God knows how many satellites we have circling this Earth. Then they could take pictures with perfect clarity. How come the satellites are not picking up these UFOs coming or going?
All right, well, 2 actually good questions. With regard to the sonic boom, we all hear sonic booms all the time, and rarely do we know what they came from. So I guess I'll leave that one there. I mean, how many of us really understand the source of the sonic boom unless we know the shuttle's coming in and we actually hear the boom, which I've heard several times, and I'm sure many of you have. Otherwise, we hear sonic booms all the time, and we don't know where they come from. So how do we know what they're from? Now, you want to add anything to that, Doctor? He mentioned satellites, too, and why don't we get clear photographs? I would think even if the government had a satellite up there that took a clear photograph of a UFO, certainly they're not going to hand us the footage. The closest we get to that is the STS missions, which have cameras focused down on the Earth, and we've got a lot of weird footage from that.
We got a lot of weird footage from the GOES satellites, and in reference to the sonic boom issue, I don't think that the form or modus operandi of the transportation is linear. If now several scientists, and I even understand there's been some change in the opinion of quantum physicists that believe that black holes do exist and can transport us through various areas of a multiverse. And so when we see an object in one spot and then we instantaneously see it in another, that doesn't mean that it traveled from point A to point B. they may have a way of doing it, and we may also have back engineered that technology where right angle high speed turns do not create any kind of a linear drag on the atmosphere that would cause a sonic boom.
That's a good point. Very quickly, west of the Rockies, Chris, you're on with Dr. Lear from New Mexico.
Hi, Art, and hi, Dr. Greer, and welcome back to this program. Great guest. I have a very simple question for Dr. Greer. Given the exciting work that he's been doing, why does he think that no other doctor is doing the same thing or inclined to do the same thing, both here in the United States and abroad?
Well, in the first place, I've never said that there wasn't anybody else except me. I said what I have said in the past is I don't know of anybody else. There may be hundreds of people doing it all over the world, but it's not on the literature. It's not in the internet, and
Chris, do you know of anybody doing it?
I certainly don't, but wouldn't you think that those people would try to get in touch with each other, or I have a hard time to believe that those people would keep it secret and would not at least get in touch with other people, interested in the same field.
Yeah, Doctor?
Well, I would certainly hope they would, but so far nobody has contacted me. I get contacts from other physicians in various specialties, and they want opinions about various things, but as far as I know, there's nobody that's made sort of a sub-scientific specialty out of it.
Doctor, I would think that other physicians, for example, certainly remove things from people from time to time. Some of them might be things that have stories attached to them of abductions or what have you. And perhaps the person didn't tell the physician about that, and so the physician does a little bit of surgery, removes something, and tosses it away with the rest of the dangerous material or something, right?
Oh, you're exactly right, and you're right on, and I've done the same thing myself for most of my practice life.
So there might be all kinds of things that are removed from people almost routinely, and they might or might not have some story attached with them. They just get tossed away, and that's that.
That's it. We're interested in how the patient does. Well, we got it all out, and whether it's malignant or benign. And if everything is fine, then everything else is bye-bye.
That's it, folks. They check to make sure that something is not malignant, which from a medical point of view, it probably would not be. They do no further testing. It gets tossed, and that's the end of that. Dr. Roger Lear, he's doing something a little different. Of course, that's why he's on Coast to Coast AM, and he'll be right back. Top of the day to you, everybody, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Dr. Roger Lear is a physician who removes, among other things, implants. Well, we think they're implants, things that test, for example, much as meteorites test that fall to Earth, and that is with substances simply not found on Earth. Now, if you pull that out of a person, what is it that you've taken out of them? Well, he's getting all of that tested. He's just recently taken out another that is very suspicious. We'll have the results of that soon, but some of the others definitely have come back like meteorites. What does that tell you? I'm Art Bell. All right, Dr. Lear has a website, alienscalpel.com. That's alienscalpel.com. He also has a video DVD, which is entitled The Scientific Study of Alien Implants. You can order that, and Doctor, correct me if I'm wrong about any of these numbers, at area code 805-495-2613. That's 805-495-2613. That should be fascinating. A couple of books, The Alien and The Aliens, rather, and The Scalpel. You can order that also at area code 805-495-2613. Again, that number, 805-495-2613. That sounds like a personal number. And, of course, UFO crash in Brazil, the latest, at 800-700-9733. That's 800-700-9733. Is all that correct, Doctor?
The last one also they can get for the 805-495-2613. And I just came out with a brand new DVD. It's a wonderful interview with one of the pilots who flew a chase plane in 1976 in Iran for the famous UFO event that happened over Tehran.
Wow. All right.
Sensational interview. This man is a retired general from the Iranian Air Force.
This 805 number, is that you?
That's me, right.
All right, well.
That's me, but I have, there's a service and a secretary there who picks it up and takes the call. Also, The Aliens and the Scalpel now is out in the second revised edition. That's the newest book that came out. It has some of the material that was in the first one, but then there's all new stuff in the back, new reports and photos, so totally different ballgame.
All right. Let's see if we can clear some calls here. We've got an awful lot of them. Wildcard line 4, you're John. You're on with Dr. Lear.
Yeah, this is John in Westminster. Dr. Lear, are you aware that a man who was murdered a few years back by the name of...
No. Don't give us a name. A man who was murdered.
Well, you've had his name on the radio before, so I don't know what the problem is.
Well, I doubt there's one, but you never know. I'm just trying to be careful here. So, at any rate, what about this man?
He was connected with the Area 51. He was a geologist that helped build the underground rail system as well as the underground bunkers. It was Bill Snyder. Now, Bill pointed out in one of his tapes a number of things that... from the early 1940s to into the 90s, we had spent a series of trillions of dollars upon black budget. Part of that black budget is connected to what Dr. Lear ran into when he was in Brazil, when we're talking about the man who died within 2 weeks of a hemorrhagic condition. Now, what Phil pointed out on the tape was that the Russians and the Americans, of course, had been developing different biologicals, and that the Russians had more deadly material that had a longer shelf life. And the reason that it had a longer shelf life was they were using recombinant DNA to take fluids from alien bodies and combine that with bacteria and viruses, hence hemorrhagic fever.
Okay. And so your question is he aware of all this or what?
Yeah, is he aware of that and other programs that have dealt with body fluids of different aliens in conjunction with the biological program?
Doctor?
Yeah, I've certainly done as much reading as the next guy in reference to the subject, and I've heard that, of course, before, including one individual who is still being, the names being bannered about, which I won't mention, that claims to have been working on a project there from a dying species that was using earth science to help solve the problem. So, yeah, I've heard it many times before. So,
okay. East of the Rockies, Pat, you're on with Dr. Lear.
Hi, Dr. Lear and Art. I have a question about a scar that's behind my left ear. I had it since I was a teenager, and when I was in my 20s, I asked my mother if I ever had surgery, and she said no. In 92, I had cancer in the ear, and I had it reconstructed. And the doctor looked behind my ear, and he said, have you ever had laser surgery recently? And I said, never. And he said, well, you have a scar. And I said, yes, I know. I've had it since I was a teen. And I was just wondering if you've heard another case of this happening.
There are many cases involved with the abduction program in which abductees have wounds and scars. I'm not talking about anything in relation to the implant subject because the implants have no scar, but in relation to the alien abduction phenomena itself, many abductees report the scars that they have no knowledge of their origin.
Is there any way of finding out if it's like, who do I talk to, who do I see?
What part of the country are you in?
I am in New York.
In New York. Well, you know, you have the Intruders Foundation there, and I would certainly give them a call.
Bud Hopkins. Pat, do you have any memory of any abduction or anything like that?
I have loads of stuff. I mean, loads of memories, loads.
Well, in that case, the Intruders Foundation would be where you'd want to go. It's, you know, impossible over the phone, obviously, to make that kind of call, for the doctor to make that kind of call, other than to say, get it looked at. In Tennessee, Jay, you're on with Dr. Lear.
Yes. Hello. I'd like to thank both of you for talking to me right now.
Sure.
My question is that considering the 30 megahertz range that is publicly reserved and publicly available to review, is reserved for mobiles. I sent this to you a little bit ago on email. What makes you think that this is not partially involving the human agencies, and so this is this telecommunications range is specifically involved within for mobiles?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's a reasonable question. We have no way of knowing right now what it might be involved with. We also know it's a satellite frequency, or very close to one, so it could be. In other words, he's saying, what makes you think, doctor, that it doesn't have some earthly origin? And the answer to that, I suppose, has to be it could, but
no, we just
who do you
yet.
know implanting people with transmitters?
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like, all I can say at this point, without having more data, we have to wait till we get the data about the internal structure, is that it doesn't really look like anything that's in the form of a microchip or something that we would know that would produce that kind of a signal. Most of the things I've looked at before apparently are forms of nanotechnology. Now, we did have another one that we removed that was putting out a signal, which I don't have the figures in front of me, but that was kind of a different case because it oscillated back and forth between two frequencies. This one locked on one.
That's also fascinating. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Lear. Harry.
Oh, thank you, Art. This is my first time getting to speak with you, for I've spoke with George many times, and I do recall this as a great privilege. Thank you so very much for the time. Dr. Lear, my question would be, do you get to keep the implants from your patients? Do they request them back? And does the government themselves, somebody in some agency out there, request that you turn over some of the data that you receive from this?
Well, the patients do have to sign a form which relinquishes the custody of the object to ANS Research. Now, at the same token, it's a two-way street because what we do is to guarantee that any data that's derived from looking at these objects in a scientific manner is to be shared with the individual that it came from and the rest of the world. So there is no ownership of it, so to speak. And no, I've not been asked by the government for anything in specific. The only thing I can say to that is I had a phone conversation once with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut who I've never met before in my life. And I put in a call to him, returned my call, and I was, when I got on the phone, I said, "Oh, this is Dr. Lear. You probably don't know who I am." And that's as far as I got. And he said, "Well, Dr. Lear, we all know who you are." So I don't. That sort of raised the hair on the back of my neck too.
Well, I take it these people get a free operation, and in return they sign this form relinquishing.
Oh yeah, we don't. There's no charge for anything that we do, except they have to get themselves to me. I would love to have enough funds to bring them from all over the world, but unfortunately we can't do that. But all of the treatment, the surgery, the aftercare, the laboratory, the analysis is all paid for by our 501c3 nonprofit A&S Research.
Very good. First time, make that wildcard line 1. You're on the air with Dr. Lear. Hi.
Good morning, gentlemen. I heard an interview with Dr. Lear way back in about 1999. Dr. Lear, are you still in communication with General A?
Yes, I am. And
there was an awful lot of information that kind of correlates with certain things as far as my family and things with my sister, one deceased, but a sister still living. An awful lot of information that correlates, and I just needed as much updated information on General A and any new revelations and communication that you would have with him.
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that he has a very bad case of cancer, and we all are praying for him.
I'm certainly sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation because I've known him for many, many years. But I've lost a number of friends to cancer. Every single person that was involved with that piece of material from we suspected Roswell crash site is dead, except me.
How are you doing health-wise, Doctor?
Well, Art, I have my good days and I have my bad days, but I keep going on and keep my mind off my bloody body and just go from one thing to the next.
There you go. First-time caller line, Ryan. You're on the air with Dr. Lear.
Yeah, hi. This is Ryan, and I'm an elder with the Children of the Wild One, and I've been doing frequencies and stuff based on and harmonics based on the teachings of Atlantis. And what I have gotten based on kinesiology and muscle testing is that this frequency of about 30 megahertz is actually a frequency that deals with a certain nerve receptor that controls the human genome reproduction. And it would also basically, putting this in a woman who is fertile, would control the advancement of the human race through artificial evolution.
That's quite a revelation. I don't know how to deal with that information. Do you, Doctor?
Well, I can maybe summarize that and pass it to my friend who's a geneticist for his opinion. I do know that we know now that each segment of DNA that we have, each individual DNA marker for each human being has a different electronic signal. So there could be something in what the gentleman is saying. If you add a device, that's why I don't think these things are tracking devices, but because an advanced civilization could certainly build an electronic device that, if they wanted to, could tune in on anybody's DNA they want to do. They'd track you anywhere, probably in the universe.
If not tracking, then manipulation?
Well, it could be manipulation, but I think they do support the idea that information is being derived from them, but I think that it has to do more with some kind of a genetic experiment. How well is it going? And there's basic information that's coming out which is useful to some entity.
Fourth wildcard line, Jonathan, you are on the air with Dr. Lear. Hi.
Hi, this is Jonathan Reed. How are you doing, Art?
Fine.
Hey, Dr. Lear, you and I met up in Sacramento a few years ago, and I had the opportunity to meet you.
Is this Jonathan Reed, Mills Hole, Jonathan Reed?
Well, Jonathan Reed from Washington State, but not Mills Hole.
Okay.
This was my alien in the freezer.
Oh, well, that's right. I'm sorry. Of course, that Jonathan Reed. Okay.
And I just wanted to say, Roger, if there's funding necessary to do more research, that funding is available to you outside of the United States.
Well, if you can point me in that direction, that would be absolutely wonderful.
You send me an email, and I will do my best.
It's probably going to have to be the other way around, Jonathan. You're going to have to send him one. You've got his website.
Great.
Right?
I will get in touch with you.
Okay. Well, that's kind of sad that anything, so many things these days, Doctor, including news stories that are not exactly mainstream here, funding research into certain areas, all has to be done outside the United States for various reasons. It's sad. It's just, to me, very sad.
But it's absolutely true. Look at Pons and Fleischmann, who are happy and well in Switzerland, being funded by Toyota.
Yeah, I know.
Sad.
I know. Sad is, I guess that's the only word for it. Wildcard Line 2, you're on the air with Dr. Lear. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
This is Eden in Chula Vista.
Okay.
California, KOGO 600.
Mm-hmm.
This is just so incredible. I was just thinking. Now, I've been on hold for a bit, but I was just thinking what to tell you, Art. I've been listening to you since the first show I listened to you on. It was Jonathan Reed. It was the Jonathan Reed show.
Oh, what a coincidence. Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so
okay.
If you have a question.
One quick comment. Could Dr. Lee give a little more information on that San Diego conference coming up? And in all of his researches, I mean, I've probably had enough things happen to me in the 50 years of my life that would fill one of your old 4-hour shows. I don't have any kind of like alien abduction experiences that I remember, but I've had like from all the full range of things that you guys talk about, from seeing UFOs and.
All right, sir. We're gonna have to hold it. We're gonna have to hold it right there. We're out of time. On the San Diego conference, nobody's finding it on any of the websites, Doctor. Very quickly.
NationalUFOConference.com, and it's at the Bahia Hotel, I believe, December the 2nd and 3rd.
Are you going to have something on your website about it?
I will shortly, yes.
Okay, so just keep checking the same websites, folks, and you'll run into it. Doctor, thank you so much for being here. As always, an incredibly fascinating show. Really fascinating. 30.012732. Doctor, you have a good night.
Cosmic good night.
Good night. That's it for tonight. Tomorrow night we'll be back, folks, once again, as usual, same time, same station. However, Dr. Sir Charles Schultz III will be my guest from Manila. Good night.